Welcome, everybody. I'm Val Pancakes, and joining me tonight on the stack, I have the president of wrestling, Mr. Phil Stamper.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for joining me tonight, Mr. Phil Stamper. So, I put out on Twitter that I was going to be interviewing you to see if anybody had any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that I received
I'm
was
waiting for it. I'm just like, okay.
So why did you pick to be the president of wrestling, and why not maybe the governor or the mayor? And that was, of course, asked by Mr. Baby Dragon himself, Mr. Aaron Wade.
You just call him Baby Dragon?
Yeah, he's the Baby Dragon.
Aaron. I know. But so Aaron is my Florida tag team partner, by the way. And so one, president is above governor and mayor, so that's an easy decision. Honestly, I'm trying to think how many years ago now, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was at this place in wrestling, like I want to change things up, and like, let's be realistic about like where I am in my wrestling life. And I felt like I was transitioning more to more mouthpiece roles, more authority roles. I was the GM of like 5 promotions, and it was like, well, I feel like I'm kind of running things. And in my life outside of wrestling, I had a job previously where the only description I could give people was like being the mayor of a small town. So it's like, I feel like I really am running stuff. So, okay, I'll be the authority figure, and I will be the president of wrestling and embody whatever the hell that's going to take.
Okay. That's acceptable. We'll have to see if Aaron thinks that's acceptable. But
as for like mayor and governor, like, well, yeah, like I said, like president outranks. The mayor is fair. Like mayor would be fair. Governor, I don't know. Like you're in this weird place. Like, yeah, president.
Yeah,
president of wrestling. There was way too many kings. Like there's been 5,000 kings. Like I don't need to be a king. President.
You're the POW.
Yeah. Like, thank you. That was part of it. I never really got the POW off though. I never really got that going. Even when I started doing like hashtag trust and Phil, like I thought like, oh, let me give you a tip. Trust and Phil. And no one really got it. I tried that a couple times in a couple promos, and nobody was like picking up on like TIP was trust and Phil. And it's like, I'll just move past that. I'll just keep saying trust and Phil because people would say that to me. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Fair enough. I trust in Phil. So
thank you.
One of the other kind of questions I got was you put together literally like a super badass calendar of indie wrestling events. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to do that, and how much time does that take you?
What inspired me? I'm trying to think, because I've had a couple different iterations over time. Baby Phil, when he got into wrestling, not too long after I got into wrestling, I hurt my neck. I was in college. I slipped on some ice in a parking lot and like landed on the back of my head, screwed my neck up. And I was like, well, I can't do anything for a little while, but I still want to be involved. And so at that time in my life and in wrestling, I don't know why I'm using air quotes like this. The internet was still a burgeoning thing, an idea. And the concept of a person in wrestling writing about wrestling was like foreboding. Like you could be in trouble. And all I was doing was putting out events in a particular area. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. So I was just putting out, here are the events just in Pennsylvania. Here are the results just in Pennsylvania. And even one time I started to do like rankings, and I did it all under a pseudonym. And the level of heat, not even with the rankings, the level of heat that my pseudonym got for just putting out information about events was insane. So I had to keep that Phil Stamper, who is involved in wrestling, was not Nate Stein, who was just writing about wrestling. And then years later, those two kind of merged because people eventually other people found out. And so like it just became a thing. And so there was a good contingent of people north of the Mason-Dixon line who knew I was Nate Stein, and everybody else south of the Mason-Dixon line still knew me as Phil Stamper. And there did the two cross, and then more and more people started to cross, and it just worked out that, you know what, it's me. It's just Phil Stamper. I'm the president of wrestling. So that sort of started the path of it. I'd stopped for a while, came back, did it, stopped for a while, came back and did it. And I will never be done. And that's all in my brain. I have to pause sometimes and think like, Phil, you're just gonna miss some things. So if I'm like, actually, between the time I got home today from my office job and before the start of the interview, I was like, I have like 30 minutes to kill. So I literally worked on the calendar. I was like, I don't have enough time to start another thing before the interview, so I'll just do this a little bit. If I'm watching TV and just vegging, and I'll have my computer out and I'll be working on it. So it's sort of like an ongoing forever thing. I don't miss people with intention. I have had people very upset with me that I have not included them on the list because I was their mechanism for advertising. And I'm like, okay, I shouldn't
then pay up.
right, that too. I have had people like promoters go like, here's all my information, I need you to do press releases for me and all this stuff, and I'm like, whoa. I do the calendar, I put out the calendar, I have a wrestling media contact list of, I think now I'm at like 525 people, but and I do mainstream builds for like mainstream media in the particular areas. I'm like, but I don't do that for everybody because that takes specific time to do for just you. So I will do the calendar and you will be a part of the calendar. And I just do it. People are like, how much do I have to pay to get on it? I'm like, well, however much you want to pay me, but I just do it to do it. If you want me to do that for you, pay me to do that. I will gladly do that for you. So I will say I have had, this is when I get in trouble because I'm like, I don't want to out anybody for weird things. Somebody who was contracted to work for a national television company behind the scenes also was the promoter of a wrestling company and thought I was like purposefully not including them. And I'm like, I've literally included you every event except this one time. I can go back and I can see that it's certainly not intentional. I have like no ill will towards you. I just honestly, I didn't see it pop up on my feed. I didn't really go look for it. Sorry. And I was like, but you can also send your event information to me. Like, here's my email address, included on whatever press list you have. What press list? It was like, how are you promoting your events?
That sounds like a you problem.
Right. And I'm like, I will help with what information I have, but if you're not sending anything to anybody, I can't help you. And you're person who works for behind the scenes for a nationally televised company. So yeah.
Should maybe know that.
Yeah. And I have had a couple of those moments, and I have had honest conversations with some promoters. I've offered different people, like, I will give you workshops on what to do, and I will help you through what to do. I cannot do all of it. I would love it if you want to pay me like that. That'd be great. The second that comes up, people like freak out. I mean, the amount of promoters who have told me, like, even when I talk to them about just like doing traditional flyering, which by the way is still like a proven method of it working. Like, I don't have money for that. I don't. How do you expect me to run an event and advertise? Yeah, it's kind of what it's a thing.
How do you expect to get people there if you don't?
Right.
Like,
and I mean, you have to be smart about it. You also have to know your market. Each market is a little bit different, and there's ways to do it for free as well. Even if you do just have to rely on online, there's ways that you can go beyond just your own social media feeds. And almost, I'm not gonna say every event, but like almost every event I've had or been a part of this year that I've done press for specifically, all but 2 have had mainstream media coverage. Like, the news showed up or the newspaper showed up and covered it. Some gave, a preview, some gave like a review. So you have to put yourself out there in order to be seen and to be heard and all that stuff. So to back up to the wrestling calendar stuff. So yes, it takes a lot of time. Never feel like I'm finished. I feel tremendously guilty when somebody's like, "Hey, you forgot me," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." But it's my little part that I've for what I can do to contribute back to the world of wrestling to be like, "Hey," because for everything I just said, some promoters, ones who promote, are really bad at the promoting aspect of being a promoter. And so, okay, here's a little bit of help for hopefully what I can do. Now, what's interesting is that has turned into not just for fans, but then wrestlers are using it to find bookings for themselves, which was an unintended consequence of when I started to put together the calendar. I did not go into that with intention. So there are people on a super secret list of hey, here, I'm sending this to you once a week, so you have it. Just because I'm glad it's a helpful tool, and that more and more people are starting to utilize it as a helpful tool.
And use it, it sounds kind of like in different ways. Like I would use it to go to shows, but other people might look at it and say, I will be in this area on this date, and I'm going from one city, city A to city B. Does city somewhere in the middle have a show that I can
exactly
brother my way onto? Like,
I get a lot of that. I get a lot of like, hey, I'm gonna be between Maine and Tennessee on this date. What's happening? And I'm like, I used to, because I'm nudgy in my brain, and I'd be like, okay, here's the states individually. And I'm like, I'm not doing that now. Like, I'm cutting and pasting the screenshot of the promotions from that day. Good luck. Like, I just can't, I don't have the time.
Just wash your hands of that and just be like, here.
Every now and again, especially when people get a little weird with me about it, I'm like, I could just not do this anymore.
And it's like, have you ever thought about like giving up the wrestling calendar?
I have. I'm not gonna lie. I even one time
today or
maybe getting ready for this interview and thinking about it. No. I mean, there was somebody who was looking for an internship, and I almost was like, when Baby Phil was in college and had to do an internship, I worked for a health department and literally put together a listing of community events. It wasn't in the same format, but it was like, I still was kind of pulling together data, and I was like, I can totally write this up as an internship for somebody to just help me. And together with that person, we probably both would still miss events. I have started with the goal in my mind that it will eventually help me at some point, or at least hopefully maybe also help me find bookings. I am keeping a wrestling contact list now of all these promotions that I put on my calendar. So at present, and I've literally added some today, I am at 417 promotions that have appeared on the calendar in the last 2 months.
2 months?
Yeah. Different promotions. So because then there's promotions that run multiple times, there are many more events than just 417 that have happened in the last 2 months. So of just the ones I've captured, there's 417 promotions I have in my contact list. In the year, it was like something like in the year leading up to the pandemic, maybe even the first year of the pandemic. Oddly enough, that one same promoter was asking me like, how many promotions do you actually like have on there? And at that time, it was kept in a different format, but at that time I was like, I think I counted something like 800 I had been tracking in the course of the year before that. So I feel like I'm only at half capacity right now.
So there's room to grow.
Right.
Room to grow.
There's more out there.
How do you find out about these promotions? Do the promoters email you and say, hey, we have an event on this date, can you list it on the calendar?
Unfortunately,
is it just like, do you just have like a Twitter account that just like you just follow like everything. Like indie and shindy and just like hope for the best?
I mean, it starts with, well, yes, some people can send me stuff and some people do, but when I say some, I mean like 10. Like, it's not like many really are sending me stuff. Lately, I've gotten a fan who keeps sending me a lot of Ontario events. And if it wasn't for that fan, that one person, there would not be as much coverage of events happening in like, especially the Toronto area. except for the few I would find. A lot of coverage on Facebook. Like literally one of the ways I do this. Hey, I'm going to type the word wrestling in the search calendar. Go click on the event tab and then click dates for the week. And then that's literally how I'm pulling some. Sometimes I'll just type the word wrestling in, or indie wrestling or independent wrestling, pro wrestling, see what comes up on Twitter or on Facebook. I mean, so I dig a little bit, but then there are some promotions that I know, like, oh, let me check them out. Like, I'm not gonna lie, now that that one promoter did reach out to me like every now and again, like I literally did this afternoon when I got home and went to his site and found, oh, you're promoting an event that you didn't tell me anything about. It's a couple months away. That's great. Okay, it's on the calendar now. But then I'm a dummy because like there are sometimes the promotions I work for and I'm doing separate press for, I forget to include on the calendar. So it certainly isn't a slight when I forget someone and don't put them on. Sometimes I just miss it.
So no greater conspiracy to keep certain promotions off of the Trust in Phil pro wrestling calendar. Exactly. It is all just happenstance.
And I do once a week,
unless
like on my
no.
right, unless it's not. I do once a week put it also out on my personal like Facebook page and like, hey, here's the draft. Tell me what you got. And I used to tag like a random collection of like, let's say 30 people a week, just to be like, hey, Facebook doesn't let me tag people anymore like that. When I send it out and I post it, like I used to do the same thing. Like I'd post like the first however many promotions until I ran out of Facebook tags. Facebook doesn't let me do that anymore.
So you were being stifled by Facebook?
Yeah, pretty much. I have been put in Facebook jail so many times because I literally clicked on too many pictures. Like didn't click like.
Excuse me?
Right.
That's a thing?
That's a thing. Oh, and I did click like on too many things. And that got me flagged because I will, even if I'm not a part of an event, I will, if it's wrestling content, I click like all the time because it's part of what helps the algorithm out. Like I'm in especially like on Facebook and on Twitter, like on Facebook, on my personal profile page, I have about 5,000 followers. So that means I boost their view algorithm because somebody with a lot of followers with similar content, liking similar content to theirs. So the algorithm is fun time funny. So it's like the more you click like on a thing means it's going to get exposed that much more because Facebook isn't feeding all of your content to all of your followers. So it's sort of based on whether or not people are clicking and liking it. I know I have a following. Okay, great. So I'll click and like, and especially my friends will start to see that. Not all of them, but some of them. So I do that on my Twitter, which has 10,000 people on it right now. And it's all just to help the industry because I want wrestling to be better. And part of that better is to just be more exposed in a positive way.
Is being more exposed better in wrestling?
I said exposed and I was like, the choice of wording I had right in that moment. Let's think about that.
But to what you were saying, it's like a lot of people don't know, like I didn't know until I did, that independent wrestling was like a thing.
Yeah.
And a thing that I could go to and a thing that was in my city. Like I think that a lot of people have that similar, like I didn't know that this was a thing until I knew. And then it's like, what did I miss out on for years? Like,
right.
What was I thinking? Not going to this. At least that's how I thought when I found out about it. Like I had no idea that there was like wrestling companies in Omaha that I could go see, once a month or whatever until I did know. So alongside that, and we kind of touched on it a little bit as you were going through this, but I know that you have worn a lot of hats in wrestling, that you've done a great number of things.
I was like, literal hats? Is this a bald joke?
Never would I ever.
On the bald monkeys, no less.
Never would I ever. I support all hairstyles or non-hairstyles if that's the choice you want to make.
Thank you for saying it was a choice.
I mean, you could choose to have like a Hulk Hogan like back fringe if you wanted.
Unfortunately, mine would come out more like the monk cut, and I the like friar monk cut. I didn't want that.
Well, not with that attitude.
Wow, Val.
I mean, you could make that a whole look.
I mean, yeah, it would be a look.
I don't know. I mean, nobody else has it that I know of, so it'd be very an individual thing for you to do.
A lot of like middle 40s actors in the 80s had that look, and I don't think it looked good then.
Bring it back.
Like when you watch those movies, you're like, really? Was that a thought you had? Intentional?
No, we all make choices. So, but like I was kind of saying, I know that you have done a lot and continue to do a lot in wrestling. So, what roles have you had, and what are some of your favorite roles that you've had, and kind of where are you now with what you do for independent wrestling and wrestling? Because you do a lot that I don't think people know about.
I mean, I got into wrestling to be a wrestler. Go figure. I liked being in front of the camera, so you know, I certainly think that is the part and role that was for me. And now I've found that I have a voice, and that voice has moved into being both an authority figure and as a manager and on commentary. And so I hate ring announcing. Like people use me as a ring announcer, and I appreciate when people ask me. I hate ring announcing because it's so unappreciated in many respects. And you know, a good ring announcer to me is like a good front of house manager at a restaurant. Like if there are problems, they're troubleshooting in the moment, or they're the one corresponding in the back with the promoter or whatever's happening. And not enough ring announcers know even that that's a thing. People think that they can just grab a microphone and go. And then it's like you're given so little credence for like the part that you play that's very important on an event. Because I have seen ring announcers kill a show. Like bless him. And he was the father of a promoter I worked for. There was actually an event near me here in Maryland, and this promoter's dad filled in, and we were running the event at a school. He worked at that school, but he got on the mic and talked red things like, oh, this, like, oh, it was not strong. It was not a very strong appearance. And so it was hard then to like get the crowd into it and excited, and to keep them excited. And there's times when you need to like hit a little bit of an interlude and kill time. And not a lot of people can do that. I'm fortunate that I can do a little bit of that. But I don't always like that is not the role that I want really for me. And honestly, typically it's also super underpaid. There's a little bit of that too. So I mean, this is a job. Like, let's face it. For me, this is a job. This is a job where I also want to be in front of a camera. So those are the in front of camera roles. I've also been a ref. Behind the scenes, I mean, I have sat there and sold tickets. I've sold food. I've sold merch. I've set up rings and sound and lights and things that I don't know how to do that I've learned how to do. I mean, fortunately not recently, but like I used to know HTML, like old school web language. I used to, when I had my own up for a while, like I would make websites in Microsoft Publisher and convert them to HTML so I could have a website. Like super bad. And now I know a little bit more. I know WordPress and Drupal, but like that is, you know, there are better people than me at that. And then people also wanted, like, if you're doing that, oh, you need to also be great at graphics work. And in my life outside of wrestling, I work for a communications and marketing entity. And it's like, no, you don't need to be that same person for all of it, because no.
Like you can hire somebody else to do that.
Right. Like a lot of people who, when they find out that, oh, you run the social media for these companies and you were doing the content of these websites and you're doing all their press work and you're doing this, and this, like, oh, well, you must be making all this great money from the world of professional wrestling. And I'm like, Oh, I make good money because I work for a lot of different companies, not because any one of them are like, I mean, let me not lie. Revolver's pay me really well, but but not a lot of other places are like at that level.
And that's why you have Revolver as your background.
Hey, I know where the bread is buttered, and it's Wrestling Revolver. Ain't gonna lie, MCW ain't gonna lie. Like there's some great places that are out there. I worked last weekend, the weekend before for Central Pennsylvania Slam Fest. This is not a knock on them. They run one event a year. It's an outdoor event at a brewery. It's a hell of a fun time. It's a lot of fun. And it's a lot of friends that I have from like Camp Leapfrog that are a part of this event. And it's like, does it pay tremendously financially well? No, but it's a fun event. So I'm okay with that too. Like I can insert my fun. Like what else would I have done that weekend if I couldn't have found another event? Like I would have only had quote unquote had nothing and only had that. And it's like I'm okay to have a little bit of fun once in a while because wrestling is a job for me. And I get a little bit annoyed now and again when I hear people say like, oh, wrestling your fun thing. I'm like, I get paid. Like this is part of my life and a work environment for me. Yes, I try to have fun. I have a horrible habit of making work fun and fun into work. And so like there needs to be this reciprocal arrangement here. But like wrestling is a job. And I'm fortunate that I'm in the rare percentage of people that can actually pay bills with their wrestling career. I'm very, very fortunate on that. And I know it. I'm very humble with a place like Revolver, where I'm one of half a dozen people who are on their events regularly who does not have a television contract. Like I'm very keenly aware of that and conscious of that. I'm also keenly aware that I walked out there in October when we didn't have an event in 2.5 years and got the loudest response of anybody that evening. Yes, it was to get booed out of the building, but I got the loudest response of the evening. So like, again, I know where my bread is buttered and I know you have to work for it too. It didn't like just happen overnight that was the response I got. So
Indeed.
I think I went a really long circle on that one.
No, that's the questions are what you make of them.
Right.
Like I'm never looking for like a specific answer other than whatever you feel comfortable talking about and telling me.
Zen Val right now, everybody.
I don't try.
Val Zen sounds better. That's like a Superman level name, like Val Zen.
Val Zen. Like especially if you like smoosh it together.
Val Zen.
Yeah. Like I'm a magician.
Jean Valjean. It's a very French.
Potentially.
Je parle petit français. Ça va?
All the French that I know comes from like random bits of movies.
That's fair. That's totally
so
fair.
It's probably very specific instances in which they would be useful.
I regret that I don't know Spanish, but because of my French, when I hear Spanish, I pick up every like 20th word. So like I can sometimes like, oh, I get it.
I know colors and numbers in Spanish, which is very unhelpful to me, generally speaking. Like, okay, I know that you're talking about something that is blue, but I'm not real bright, so I just let that all just wash over me and hope for the best. So kind of backing it up a bit, like probably decades. What was
Wait a minute. What do you mean?
No, I'm getting there.
Now, Val?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
What was a young Phil like? Like, what were you like as a child? See?
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I was a precocious young lad. I don't know.
Did you wear a monocle? When you say it like that, it sounds like you wore a monocle.
No, but I wore hair. I had a big curly fro, and like everybody knows me now. Like, what? I was like, I had poofy hair. And when it got wet, it became like ringlets. But when I let it get dry, I was in denial I had curly hair. So I tried to always brush it out straight. Well, what happens when you brush out curly hair? Oh, there is a blackmail picture of me somewhere from a Christmas event that I went to that like I woke up one morning, hair, like it's bad. There's a
I
couple,
want to see it so bad.
probably a couple.
Who do I need to hit up to make
I'm sure there are family members that are like chomping at the bit with blackmail photos. Like I can imagine. I made the mistake. This all of you like burgeoning in wrestling, like and like your family's like, oh, that's really cool that you do this. If they ever ask you to like sign an autograph that says a thing, like think twice before you do it. So I saw one of my cousins. Now, to give context, on my dad's side of the family, he is one of 9 children. So I have a lot of aunts and uncles and a lot of cousins, and a lot of like I grew up with like cousins that who people I call cousins that were the children of my first generation or first cousins. And so one of my cousins was like, "Hey Phil, I want you to sign this, and I want you to put like to my favorite cousin, Phil Stamper." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I did it. She has paraded that out as like, "Look what he did."
Aww.
I'm like, one day maybe that'll be worth more than the price of the napkin.
Oh.
But like I think I was always sorry. My camera's also going a little off focus. There we go. I don't know. I think I always. I was super serious as a kid, to be honest. Like I played and stuff, but like young me, especially once I got into like late single digits and not even teen yet. I was. My mom used to say I was 40 before I was 12. Like I was always super serious. I was the oldest of 3 brothers. I always, tried to take care of them, look out for them. And when I say this next thing, this is not a fault of any family member, but like I was in a military family. My dad was served in the Navy, and his career track was not on a boat. And then the Navy realized the career track he was on never went on boat, so they canceled that career track, and so he had to go on boat. And so for his boat tour, like he was gone for the most part from the time I was like 12 to or like 10 to 13. And not that he was gone forever, and like he would come back when he could, but when he was on boat on tour for 6 months, like I'm not going to see him until he comes back. And so like I did a lot to like, okay, my brother, I have to look out for my little brothers. And I don't mean that in any bad way or that, but it was like just became super serious Phil. And even that whole thing about like I make work fun and I make fun work, like there were times I'd go to work. I mean, I started working at a restaurant when I was like 15, and it was like, okay, we're gonna have fun, and it's like, Phil, this is work. Like I know it is, and I never got in like trouble for anything. But then like I would take it the other direction, like, okay, well now we have to be super serious, and like things are messing up, and like I don't understand what's taking so long on things. And they were like, oh, Phil's in manager mode, and I'm like, so wait a minute, it's either too wrong that I'm playful, or it's too wrong that I'm like trying to hold everybody accountable. Like, and so like over time, like late teenage, early adult Phil had to like, how do you navigate these two sides together? And like, but this is so bad. Any family member that watches this is going to stab me in the face. Like by the time I became like 18 years old, like I felt like I was raising my parents, in many respects. And a couple years after that, they divorced, and it was like I became like their confessor. And so like I found out about both the relationships my parents were in, and it's like I never thought I'd have that. Like, am I really having this conversation in my life?
Like, and now you both need to pay me for the therapy session.
Right, exactly. There was a time when I first went to college, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a counselor. And then I was like, I don't think I'm at a place where I should be doing that. And then like I ended up in a career track that like for the most part, I was basically doing ad hoc counseling. So
some people just want to talk to you.
And that's okay. And now I'm at a point that if I was to have gone to college now, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, counseling's totally fine. I would have been I would have been down that road and great.
But instead, here you are.
My 168 IQ is being put to really good use.
Well, keep getting hit in the head. I'm sure that'll go down, and then you won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I'm going to wreck myself in like 5,000 other ways. I mean, for context, I have about a third of my right knee is somebody else's. I have a metal plate and 6 screws in my neck. I've put my teeth through my lips. I've broken fingers. I have tendonitis, more significantly in my left wrist than my right wrist, but both wrists. I don't know what's up with my shoulder. And actually, I kind of
still have a shoulder,
right? Like there's structure here. I don't know if it's not doing things it's supposed to do anymore. Like, I don't know. So
it's not doing things it's supposed to do. It's doing things it shouldn't.
Right. So like, I don't know what's gonna get broke next, but I know I have plenty of road to find out. I mean, I still wrestle. I'm like, I shouldn't say this out loud because a lot of my family don't know because they know about my neck and they would kill me. But
Bill's exposing himself on the stack.
There you go. There's your clickbait right there. Felix. Well, now I can't say words. There is your clickbait. Phil exposes himself on the stack.
Click to find out more.
Exactly. I'm just shaking my head now. But like a couple weeks ago, I was out in Indiana and I was visiting family, and it was before a Wrestling Revolver event in Dayton. And while I was out that way, I'm like, I'm going to check out some meet up with some friends. I'm going to go to different wrestling trainings. And I went to one and like had a practice match, and it was bad. And it was like, I fault myself for it. I took a bad bump and like my brain was like, I can't breathe. What am I doing? Like, I got through the match, finished it, and everyone was like, oh, it's fine. And I'm like, no, like it should have been like there. And I lost it. And then I went to another training and it was like, this is the greatest day I've ever had. Like, I actually went to 2 trainings on one day while I was out there. I went one day, one day and worked out. I'm like, this is a great day. And then my friend was messaging me like, hey, we're actually doing training tonight. Do you want to come down? I was like, sure, I feel great. And like, I went down there and I taught like submission wrestling. And I'm like, this is a great day. It's so like, I don't know. Like, I'm either gonna like, I don't know. I'm gonna super evolve. I'm gonna be like Krillin, who is the strongest human alive, by the way. Like be like super Krillin. Or I'm just gonna be in a wheelchair. like maybe somewhere in between. Like I'm in a wheelchair on the regular, and then like, I don't know, Super Saiyan human strength finds me, and then like beat up everybody, and then hobble back to the chair. I sometimes in one of Ric Flair's, I think in Ric Flair's first book, he talks about like one of his favorite WWE superstars was Christian. And he was like, Christian was like hobbling around in the back on crutches because he could barely walk, and then like would walk out of the entranceway with no crutches, like, yeah, everybody. And he's like, this guy's a friggin' superstar and nobody sees it because they don't see the stuff that happens in the back. And I'm like, I keep that in mind a lot. Like, there are days I'm just like, I'm gonna fall apart. And I don't even know why. I for like the last month I stand up and like one of my ankles just it's not there anymore, and I don't know why. It doesn't hurt, it's just not there. It becomes extremely painful because I then realize it's not there, and then it's gone like 5 seconds later, like nothing happened.
Do you have like supernatural body parts? I'm perplexed.
I'm gonna say yes. So, and this is, I'm gonna define this one, because in Phil wrestling life, as a wrestler, there were times I was like, there is no way I have the capacity for strength that I have right now. And like, I would come home and I would like pick up things and move things. And like, if anybody's ever moved like a ring post, like, you know how heavy those things are. And like, I would pick them up by myself and move them. And like, people would look at me, and I know they would. And I'd be like, yeah. And I put it down. I had neck surgery. And now they do tell you after neck surgery, like you're not supposed to lift anything for a few weeks, like more than the weight of a soup can. And I remember going to an auto parts store and I'm grabbing a thing of like automatic transmission fluid. I pick it up with the right hand, no problem, move it to my left hand, and like I immediately like drop. And my nephew was with me. He's like, Uncle Phil, what happened? You need to carry this. But for like 3 years, I didn't have regular strength in my left arm. And it finally got to a point like about a yearish ago of like, wow, I'm at normal human capacity. And I'm like,
you can carry a gallon of milk now.
Right. And I'm like, but I should be well beyond normal human capacity. And like the turtle shell that was my back. And it's so interesting because I had thought about this for so long, especially after my neck stuff, and then heard William Regal on Talk is Jericho. And he talked about this, that when he stopped wrestling after, or was that stopping his physical, I think after his heart surgery, that like his body's reaction was missing it and craving the physicality. And was like, it was like, for me, what it felt like was like layers of my onion were peeling off. And I thought at first, as that was happening, like, okay, all these weird little injuries, all these little bumps and bruises that I've had, like, they're going to start to heal because now I'm giving it time to rest. I'm doing physical therapy and stuff. And I remember like this one day, maybe like 6 months after my neck surgery, I was feeling pretty good. And then I went to physical therapy and it was like, I had backtracked. And I'm like, I don't understand. I'm in here like 3 days a week. I'm like going to the gym. What's happened? And they were like, all the muscles that weren't firing because you have nerve damage, but still have nerve damage in my back. You have nerve damage. And so the nerves had disconnected from muscle fiber. And so now they're trying to reconnect. Well, now the right nerves are firing with the right muscles, but those muscles haven't been worked because they weren't firing because the nerves weren't connected anymore. And so now the right muscles are trying to fire and they have no strength to them because they weren't being used. And it's like, oh, well, this sucks. So like, even now when I go to the gym, like now I'm at a point, like I can do regular weight bearing stuff. And I go to the gym, I do equal weight. And when I do the tricep pull downs, there's a machine right in front of me and I can't, my mic's like right here. So it's hard for me to do this. My left arm is a little smaller in the tricep than my right arm. And I see it, like it's very visible to me. And like, I have like in random conversations with people that I know, I'm like, look at my arms, they're like different sizes. And they're like, Phil, you see that. Nobody else sees that. But in me, it's a very real, visible thing that nobody else sees, but I see it all the time because it's just part of having to relearn how to do things that like, oh, I thought I had like more superhuman ability and like I have normal human strength. What's happening? I don't understand.
Like, calm down, Clark Kent.
Right.
Well, I'm going to Revolver on the 9th.
Yeah.
This
Saturday, July
this Saturday
9th, in Clive, Iowa.
Which is like basically just like Des Moines, Iowa.
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's west of.
I mean, when I was like, where the fuck is Clive? And then I was like, okay, it's just Des Moines. Never mind. So I'm gonna look at your arms now.
The thing is, on the front, you won't know. I literally have to do this. Oh, you can kind of see it on the camera. Like this arm is a little bit different than this arm.
I'm gonna request you to do that so I can see it in person, preferably around a multitude of other people that will have no idea why I'm asking you this. Just to be, weird.
It works. It totally works. I will make it a thing that people will have to come to understand.
And then they'll ask me, what are you doing? I'll be like, I'm sorry, you'll have to listen to the stack to understand why I'm asking this.
He was in an interview. You should listen to this interview.
As I demand it.
Right.
So how did you decide to get into independent wrestling? Like, what made you? Like, I know that you said that it was you'd wanted to be a wrestler, which I mean, yes, but like, How did you decide to get like so involved and like specifically with like independent stuff?
I mean, I was like a lot of people are. I was a fan. I would come home and there'd be on ESPN Classic. There would be like old USWA and WCCW and Global, and of course I was watching WWF and E at the time, and WCW, and it was like I eventually became hooked as a kid, and would just watch. And I was one of those kids that wrote a letter to the WWE and to WCW and was like, why can't kids wrestle too? I did not get a response from the WWE. I did get two responses from WCW. They were both, most of it was like a form letter, and the start was a little bit different. But they basically were like, hey, most places you have to be 18 to train, let alone to wrestle. And oh yeah, buy our book on how to become a wrestler. I wish I bought that book. I did not buy that book. I'm very curious about that book. But so I knew in like middle school that pro wrestling training was a thing, and that there were training centers, plural, not just like come to the WCW power plant, And so I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna look it up and dig a little bit more. And coincidentally, when I was in high school, met somebody who was just starting their independent wrestling journey, so found out a little bit through him as well, which then just continued to open up the door. And again, early day Phil, burgeoning day of internet. So discovering more and more things that were out there. But also wrestling itself wasn't all the way out there. So it was like you had to dig a little bit to find out what was going on. Was a big fan of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, like what all's out there, who all is out there. And I found out about a lot. Like, you would read through PWI 500 and you're like, what do you mean in Maryland? Like, what is the, who is this person? And like, then you'd have to dig a little bit. And so even when I went to college, when I started college, I knew it was a choice. I had to pay for college myself. And I was like, it's going to be a choice between college or pro wrestling. And at first it was, well, it has to be it has to be college. Honestly, it has to be, because what happens if I get hurt? What happens, if something bad happens? I have to have something.
You replace it and you keep going.
Well, there is that too, but you have to pay for the thing that's going to replace it. So it was like, let me start here. Let me start with this. And I started at the same time as I was in college, started working in the back for different promotions. So Cue Ball Carmichael's IPWA in Virginia, I did music and security. Different wrestling federation that ran out of State College, Pennsylvania. I did ring crew and sound and security. I did whatever I could kind of do to learn. And some people would show me stuff here and there, but I wasn't really training until a few years later. Randomly enough, I have a stomach condition that I still have to this day. A doctor misdiagnosed me, though, saying it was a precancerous condition. And so in my brain, because I also like look up everything, I was like, oh, I know what this is, and this precancerous condition more than likely will lead to full-blown cancer in 2 years, which means I'm going to be dead shortly thereafter. And so I just got to go, which is not true. People who have this condition, it's called Barrett's esophagus, does not always lead to cancer, and the cancer does not always lead to it, like you're dead. But in my brain, I was like, it's now or never. And then so I was in my last year of college and was like, I just gotta start trading. And made it work. I don't know how I made it work. Even now when I think about the finances of it, I'm like, how did I do that? Because I would drive 2 hours one way to go to training. By that point I was in college in Western Maryland, and I was driving to Baltimore for training, and I did it. And then realized as that training center closed down and suddenly, and no one really understood why, and then was trying to get bookings, and got my first booking with a friend of mine up in Massachusetts. And I was like, oh, because I got really bad training. Then but realized it super on. I was, very fortunate, had a good network of people and who helped me then like sort of recorrect things. And I went to like a boatload of seminars to just keep learning. Because the one way you learn isn't always necessarily going to be the only and good way or the best way. So it's like, all right, you have to keep going and going. But it all started because I got a weird diagnosis of what I thought was going to be a terminal issue that, fortunately, though it is terminal, that only means like I'm going to have it for the rest of my life, not that it's going to kill me. But I do have a stomach condition, not the one though that they misdiagnosed me with. But that's kind of what changed me from just being in the back to really getting in the ring. But at that point too, I had wrestled in high school. I competed in judo. I did Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Oddly enough, I couldn't go into the military because I have asthma. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can do all of this, but I have asthma. And then come to find out that the stomach condition I have also is a disqualifier for military service. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't agree with either one of these.
I don't know. You don't see what I do on the weekends.
Right.
Like,
right. Like, if you only knew. Though I will, well, and because of wrestling, sort of, I mean, I have a film life. I have a life in the acting world. And somehow, like, when people find out I do wrestling, then they're like, you can do stunts. And I'm like, yes, but it's different than what you're thinking stunts are in film world or theater world. And then, like, I remember this one day they were like, okay, we need stunt work. And I was like, okay, that's great. And I show up and they're like, you're going to get dragged by a car today. I'm very excited. I've never been dragged by. How is this going to work? And it literally was like a piece of cardboard underneath your stomach and holding onto the bumper of the car. Oh my God. You want to talk about a thrill? Like, that's a thrill and a half. I do not recommend anybody do it, like, because the way I just worded it, do not do that. But it was a thrill and a half that then didn't make the cut in the movie.
no.
But so I got into doing some different stunt work because of that, because wrestling. So it's interesting how things just like weave together a little bit here and there, and how life ends up happening.
Nice. At least you got to experience getting dragged by a car, though.
Yes. How many people can say that they have had the experience of being dragged by a car, and without injury? Like, I should add that little caveat there too.
And I can honestly say that I've never done that. I don't anticipate a world in which that will be a thing I need to do, unless I'm for some reason in some grave danger, which I would really hope not.
Right.
I would rather stay away from grave danger if I can.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, grave danger sounds like a wrestler. It probably has been a wrestler.
I feel like there should be. Like,
now introducing grave danger.
Val Pancakes. Grave danger.
Oh no. Oh no.
There was an event called Grave Danger from Independence Pro Wrestling up in Michigan.
Did you just Google this?
I totally just Googled this.
Wow. Like, that was stealth. I didn't even notice.
Oh, 120 words a minute when I have to
Jenny, Christmas.
Emerge had an event called Grave Danger. So, like, yeah, it's out there. But I don't see a wrestler named Grave Danger.
So if someone wants to steal that gimmick,
trademark Val Pancakes.
You can pay me for it, and I will gladly let you have it.
There you go. Hashtag the stag.
There's another podcast it's called The Stack, and they come out on Wednesdays too. And I started following him from my The Stack Twitter, just so he knows.
Just so he knows that you know.
I'll fist fight him if I have to.
I love it. I mean, because things have to hit,
like my fists. No. The other reason I know is because I always hashtag myself with hashtag The Stack, and so does he. And so it intermingles. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have near as many followers as I do.
As I am the president of wrestling, I also have had some sense to maybe I should trademark that. And so I have trademarked president of wrestling. And I am watching. I'm like, do I just say it? I was watching a nationally televised wrestling program just before this last election. And somebody is making a promo in the ring and says something like, huh, maybe there should be a president of this place or something, like a president of something like called pro wrestling. And I'm like, wait a minute. And because I know who that person is, I messaged them and was like, just so you know, I have trademarked president of wrestling. And then I never heard them reference it again. I was like, either have a conversation with me about it, or I didn't say that, but I was like, I'm sort of implying it. It just went away. I never heard about it again. I was like, okay, great.
Do you like, were they trying to like rip you off?
I don't think they were. I genuinely don't. But the second I said that, like that train of promos went away.
Would be a shame if you got a cease and desist.
My brain just made the dun 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 sound. So like, and like, well, then there was, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, you said shindy earlier, and I was like, how's this gonna go? There was a shindy. There was a shindy, and this guy was like, I'm the president of pro wrestling because I know you're the president of wrestling, but I'm the president of pro wrestling because it's different. It's like, okay, bro, this is not how this is gonna work. Oh, you're just upset because I'm real. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah, I've seen the events of the 15 people that you've drawn. No. Okay, so I'll be the vice president. I'm saying no, but let's see how far that carries you. And now I don't think he's involved in anything to do with wrestling. So
sometimes the trash takes itself out.
From the words of Val Pancakes.
You can always, wrestling is a fun place, but there's a lot of assorted people involved.
Yes. I'm very fortunate. Like I mean, we've all met interesting characters in the world of professional wrestling, and I am very fortunate that some of the horror stories of like absolute horror of things I have fortunately been avoided. Like I have not been associated. There are random things that I've had experiences with, like hella random, but like fortunately not like the bad. Like a lot of the bad I've been able to navigate away from. Thank gracious.
Well, I'm glad that you've been able to like have a mostly positive experience with the people you've interacted with.
Mostly.
I've been very fortunate to, so far I've had the same mostly positive interactions with most people. Just a handful of people that I really don't like, but like most people I thoroughly enjoy.
I mean, but that also happens in any walk of life. Like
yeah.
Okay, I will be very clear. Like I am very vague when I talk about my like office life outside of wrestling, because I have had people find me there, not in this particular workplace, but at others, and so I'm very vague about what I do in my office job. But like in that life, I've had supervisors who've gaslit me. I've had people who probably should not have been in positions of leadership. I have seen fraudulent behavior, criminal behavior, like that happens, and it's sort of like in every walk of life. Unfortunately, when people say like, oh, there's a few bad apples, I'm like, yes, there's a few bad apples in every bunch, and we forget that. And sometimes it's like we only focus on the bad apples of that bunch, and it's like there's some spread around. Like you kind of be cautious.
There's not just bad Granny Smith apples. There's also bad Red Delicious apples and Brayburn apples.
Right.
All kinds.
Right.
Fair. So who has had the most influence on you both in and out of the ring?
Ooh.
And it can be two different people or the same person.
I will say some of that changes over time, because I mean, I got into wrestling because I was a fan. And so like there's people who I enjoy and like inside of the wrestling ring who at different times in my life I have found enjoyment watching. I mean, like my favorite wrestler at the moment is Zack Sabre Jr. because I'm a huge technical wrestling fan, love technical wrestling, and he can trash talk like nobody's business, and I dig that. I mean, you have heard me, Val. Like, you know the things that I can say and talk, and without having to go to swearing, without having to call anybody out in an inappropriate fashion, or getting quote cheap heat. Like, I can just be a jerk, and Zach takes it to a different level, and I enjoy that so much. But like, there's different people, like, and like, my hand is right here, and so like, I see this guy in my background, and like,
Looks like you're stroking his chin.
right there, it has a little itch, like right there. It feels weird. It feels weird. Why does my finger feel weird? So like, I'll be very Sammy when it comes to visual aesthetic and identity and brand awareness is super friggin' intelligent. And because I've had that exposure of different aspects of wrestling, I'm like, there's different people I've learned from all over time that I'm like, I can take this and I can take this and I can take this. The first person I became a fan of in the world of professional wrestling was Eric Embry, and he was out of Texas. He was more than just a Texas wrestler to me, because as I found out about his history and like, not just world class and USWA, as he traveled, and eventually, I mean, he's still around, he's still with us, but like, my understanding is he got in a car crash, and that sort of ended like his in-ring career, going on to like the next level. But he was the first person I watched, and I was like, I get it. I see what's happening now. And I mean, he was in a feud. This is one of my first feuds I got into in wrestling. It was the wrestler Eric Embry versus Skandar Akbar, the manager, and Skandar's like whole crew of people that was like pretty much not just trying to take down like the company, but they were all targeting Eric Embry. And so here's Eric trying to fight back this whole army of people. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, so the story of wrestling has also attracted me too. And like, that was like the first I saw. Skandar Akbar is another one that I was like, this is amazing. So over time, I feel like I've taken different things from different people. One of my best friends in wrestling, and I know not a lot of people in wrestling will know who he is now, but he used to wrestle as Dr. Milo Shizo. He was a Ring of Honor graduate, trained under Delirious, and is so super smart to the business today. He's not in wrestling anymore, but like, him and I will have conversations, and it's like, can I just have you like come to promotions I work with and like just be there? And like, because people would learn and like really get it if they just listened, because he just has that kind of wrestling brain, and I appreciate that about him. Dan McDevitt, who's the promoter for MCW, super smart to wrestling, and outside of wrestling, he has been very successful in a career in real estate. And so like, he understands that, you know, how do you tie the business part of pro wrestling is just as important as like the rest of pro wrestling. And so like, you know, the way you make money is important. The way you do branding is important. And he is very keen on that and aware of that. And so it's like, I do cherry pick and apple pick like from the best people, because I've been exposed to so many of those people. And I super appreciate that too. Like, wow, I'm totally gonna borrow this for the next time. So I don't know. I've definitely had a lot of influences in my life in wrestling.
Good. I mean, I like that you are, you know, taking the best bits and pieces and like putting them all in your little bushel basket. Oh, we are continuing to make fruit metaphors.
There you go. My basket weaving is not strong, but you know, I can carry. Maybe not with my left arm as much, but you
know. So what do you see as your future in professional wrestling, like as of like today, looking forward?
That is a really hard question. For me, that's a really, really hard question. I don't know, to be very honest. I really don't. I, of course, would love to be signed by somebody. And I even knew even once I got into wrestling, I had the reality of I know the height I am. So I'm not intimidating anybody with my massive over 6 feet tallness that I don't have. And that is part of it. So I always thought, if I had success beyond the independent level, it's probably going to be as a mouthpiece. Maybe there's some things I can do behind the scenes as well, and I have some intelligence that I could bring to all of that. And I don't know if that's in the cards for me to have that, that next level of contract. I want to, of course, but like, just realist, just to be a realist. Like, I've applied for jobs with the WWE and have seen people from who've had no wrestling experience but television broadcasting experience, and I'm like, I totally understand that. I totally get that. And then I see somebody else who gets hired with like, they were a super fan and they got hired to be on the creative team, and I'm like, how did that happen? Like, there are times I've seen that happen too. And so, and I watch some of the moves that WWE does, and I'm like, I'm not saying I condone it, but I'm like, I see what you're doing. But why are you doing it this way? But okay. But I don't really know. Like, if somebody turned around tomorrow and said, hey, Phil, here's a contract, like, I'd seriously think about it. But I'm like, is that then where I want to? Well, I mean, yes, it's where I want to be. But at the same time, it's like, I have, because of my office life job, I can afford a lot of the things I do right now in my life. And would another opportunity afford me the same additional opportunities? So it's like, there is a pro and con and ways and balances and stuff. And like, it all has to work out in the end. And I'm very fortunate that I'm in a spot in my office life where I can do some traveling and have that time off afforded to me. But still work my ass off doing all of it.
Fair enough.
I do want to solely run my own events. I mean, certainly Revolver at MCW and a lot of other places, like, I help coordinate a lot of it. And to the degree that a lot of people don't know what I sometimes am doing behind the scenes, just keep things together. But so there is a little bit of like, I want to reach out on a limb and do some of my own things. I thought actually that was going to happen this year, and then because wrestling is wrestling, somebody who was going to rent their license to me to run events in Virginia, like, vanished into a cloud of ether, and I don't know where this person is anymore. So like, I'm looking into, okay, so that means I have to have all of my own stuff and get all of that together. And Virginia has weird commissioning and licensing stuff. Like, not just wrestlers have to be licensed. You have to have a promoter's license, of course, all the insurances and bonds that come with that. You also have to have a matchmaker license. That's an additional thing.
Sounds like an additional way for them to make money. I hate states with commissions. That sucks. All it does is just stifle the business in the area. Mm-hmm. And not just from, little guys feel it more, like the indies are going to feel it more.
Yeah.
But then you're not going to get AEW or WWE coming to you either.
It is a mix because, hey, I'm in Maryland, which fined AEW for having like barbed wire or weapons or something, and then didn't find a WWE when they came. So it's sort of like, can we figure this out now? Because I've worked with the commission, sometimes you just have to ask them in advance, and one of their things is, well, they just didn't get permission, and so that's why they got fined, was they didn't ask for the permission beforehand. And it's like, okay, so that doesn't put a great relationship with the state of Maryland and AEW, and I know that. But you're right, it's like this weird double-edged sword, because then I look at some states that don't have commissions, and it's like literally anybody can run, and that's not always a great thing for a number of reasons. And I'm not discounting anybody an opportunity, like, take the opportunities you can. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes the quality is not there in some of those places, not all of them, but in some of them. But then again, there's commission states where there's some of the quality isn't there too. So it's like, you just gotta keep an eye out on it, and what's available to happen, and what can you take the opportunities to grow yourself in. And I want to grow more, and I think that next thing is for me to put myself on a little bit of a ledge.
So you're gonna do like the Phil Stamper like president of wrestling, like election show.
A former promoter I worked for one day called me like out of the blue. I don't remember, like I hadn't worked with him in years, and he was like, I just want to call and check up on you, see how you're doing. And we were starting to talk. He's like, yeah, I was thinking of maybe running my own thing. He's like, oh, whatever you want to do in there, it's gonna be great. If you want to call it Stamper's House of Wrestling, blah, 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 blah. And then we continued the conversation, and it dawned on me what he said. And I was like, wait a minute. Did you just say Stamper's House of Wrestling? He's like, yeah, because it be a show. I was like, what? No, I'm not calling something the Stamper's House of Wrestling. But I'm like, it's there. Like, it's right there. But I have thought about, I still own Heartland Wrestling Association. That's another trademark I have. And I own the library since 2003 on. So, there's content there. There is a heritage associated to that name that I super appreciate. And I have had people offer me some money for it. And I'm like, I would, again, when it comes to quality, it's like, I think that name means something. And I think if I was to sell it, it has to go to somebody who would do something good with that property. And not guy down street who will only draw 10 people.
You want him to draw at least 15.
Right. You're at the bar.
Yeah, they have to have a bar. No.
Right. Can they limbo under it?
See, I was thinking like a bar like for beverages.
How to make Sami Callihan mad at you. Tell him that you want to name your next event, whatever city we're in, Beach Party. Like the Dayton Beach Party, Dayton, Ohio, which is near, if there's a body of water near it larger than a large creek, like, I don't know. But like, I was like, I want to have the Dayton Beach Party. I want to have, and what triggered the thought of it was I was going through Amazon looking for something, and I saw like an inflatable projection screen, like that you can do for like, like for having your front yard and get a projector and like project on the screen. I was like, oh my God, I want to get inflatable everything and like just put it around the building. And like, of course, regular wrestling ring. I'm not that crazy. And like, we're calling it the Dayton Beach Party. And I meant it as a joke. Sami did not take kindly to the joke.
So should I, if I ever get a chance to talk to Sami Callihan, I'll ask him when we're getting the Clive, Iowa Beach Party.
Yes. Everybody do it. If you are coming to Revolver, everybody ask Sami Callihan, who will be at the door. When is the Clive Beach Party?
I'll ask him for sure. And he'll go, fuck, who are you?
I don't know if I should out the person, but I'll out Sami. Why not? Because this is like nothing that Sami had any control over at all. So Sami was signed at NXT, and there's this mysterious Twitter account that shows up, and I'm gonna forget the name of it. It was like Johnny Wakewater or something, and it used a picture of Sami, like I think they even photoshopped Sami in like a pair of like beach shorts or something like that, and like trying to say that like WWE was rebranding Sami Callihan as Johnny Wakewater, and like he was now gonna have like this surfer beach gimmick, and somehow it got a little bit of buzz that somebody thought it was real. I didn't even know it existed at the time all this happened. Years go by, and a person who is now in wrestling says to me that they created this account to kind of troll Sami. As like at this time he was like 11, 12 years old. Like, he was a kid. So that's why I'm not gonna out him, because like, okay, he was a kid. But I think it's friggin' hilarious. So I'm like, maybe that's why Sami doesn't want a beach party, because he has trauma from Johnny Wakewater.
Maybe I should be like, Sami. So I've heard that Johnny Wakewater is planning a Clive, Iowa beach party.
Now, Sami denies to me, because I've brought Johnny Wakewater up a couple times. He completely denies to me any acknowledgement of that name. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Who is, like, seriously, I don't know who that is or what that was. And even when I tell him, he's like, I don't consciously remember that. Meanwhile, the person's like, oh yeah, he got hot mad. Like, he was messaging me like super pissed. And I was like, okay, Sami doesn't remember. So like, now what is funny, because I do have access to things at Revolver, like the sound. And so at intermission and before the shows, I make sure that there's music playing because I think that creates an atmosphere. And so I do that. And I now and again input Sammy Callahan's old theme song, which was Space Dementia by Muse, which he hated. after the second or third time he had it, like he was done with it. But everybody played it. And so I will sneak that into the rotation because I know, because this has happened every single time I have snuck it in rotation. A third of the way through the song, Sammy is there. Can we move? Can we get another song? Like he never says because I hate it. Like this, whatever. Never like he's calm about it, but it's just like every single time. I even did it one time to like I'm making this up in my own brain. Like this can't be real, right? Like he's not paying that much attention. Every single time if I play that song, can we play another song? Sure.
Yeah, when this one's over.
Why, Sammy? Why would you want a different song? I can torture that. Like he hates the color blue. He hates the
That's
color blue.
Weird.
It's a thing.
Blue's a good color.
Right. Like blue is like my color. Right. And so we had, I think, the first Revolver event when we came back, because when we came back in October, there was a lot of like I had to sort of like show to myself that I could do the same impact I did when we hadn't had an event in over 2 years. And so I also knew, because I have found the best Sammy Callahan is an authentic Sammy Callahan. And so I wanted to get under his skin. So I don't remember if I had he had me change my shirt because I had a blue dress shirt and he did have me change it to a Revolver shirt, but I had my blue suit jacket, like the shiny blue suit jacket that I have. He didn't say anything about it and after the event, I was like, "Hey, Sammy, what'd you think about the jacket?" And he gave me this look like, I just don't know if that's you. I don't know. Maybe it's like the color or something. And I was like, because you hate the color blue. And I wore that just for you because I knew you would get pissed off.
He hates the color blue?
It's a thing. Like he said it, like I heard it in an interview one time with him. And he was like, I can't stand the color. I think in his mind, and he is right. Again, Sammy is great with visual identity stuff. And he's like, the color blue is sometimes way overused in logos and coloring, in gear, in like all this stuff. And he's not wrong. It's a very prominent color because so many people like the color blue.
Yeah, because it's an objectively good color.
Right. But I think that's also for him, it's like, then it doesn't necessarily leave a lasting standing impression for like logo use or visual identity alone as, as a color or part of a pattern per se. Not necessarily part of a pattern, but as part of like, a statement thing. And I was like, I don't disagree with that. But I know what he thinks about it. So every now and then, just dig, just a little dig. Then again, so, now I'm, I kind of got the unit into a Cage of Horrors match. So, there's sometimes ramifications of my actions, and I have to be mindful of that. And Sammy is nothing if not notoriously crafty. So like I am cautious about what the hell he has planned up his sleeve, because he's not going to leave it. Like, I'm sorry. This is a little too much straightforward of like, okay, we're going to have a Cage of Horrors match and it's the unit versus the crew. And I'm like, you're planning something. And like, I know it. Like the whole last event. And here's a shoot, the last event that we had in Dayton. It was Infrared versus POS for the Revolver Tag Team Championship. And then I see Sammy post, because he's posting, oh, I've booked Dan the Dad and Man Scout, which, okay, where are you putting them? Tell me where you're putting. They're going to be in the tag match. And I'm saying this, I'm being very real right now. I was like, I know you're putting them in this tag match. Oh, I don't know yet. Yes, you do, because I know. Like I see it. It's written right there on the stars. Like it's right there, Sammy. Came a three-way. Like, okay. I see it. So like now he's booked on this Friday. He's booked, or excuse me, on this Saturday. He's booked Dan the Dad versus Man Scout in a singles match and a rematch from the match they were supposed to have. Like I'm something.
I was gonna say, are you calling shenanigans?
Oh yeah, Sammy and shenanigans, like they coexist.
Shenanigans.
Salmon,
Shalam ding dong. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. Phenomena.
That's gonna stuck in my head. What would you say has been your greatest achievement, and then what's the greatest obstacle that you've overcome in wrestling? Like to date.
I mean, a little bit of it is just to be here today is a little bit of both. I mean, the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize getting into wrestling is that it isn't like, okay, I'm here. Like it is a constant pushing of yourself and work and connection and building and moving. And, you know, there's a lot of moving parts to the world of professional wrestling that a lot of people don't understand or see, which sometimes I get hot about because I'm like, you lazy bums need to get off your butts and like help clean up after yourselves. Yeah, grown ass adults. Like there's times I have that moment. Because like there's a reputation that we have as a company, there's a reputation we have as with the building. There's, you know, there are different pieces of what it means to be involved in wrestling. And I think some people don't know that that is a constant cycle and process and progress and improvement that never should be stopping. That for me is also why like I do love continuing to learn things and doing things a different way. This is going to sound silly, but it will go back to like the calendar stuff. I now have the calendar built out in Google Docs, and I just did that about 6 weeks ago. I moved it from literally a notepad document. One, just because now I can be anywhere and sign in and I have access. But two, because now if I can ever get it back to be updated on a website, I had that at one point and the coding broke and somebody else made the site and then they decided to give up. And so it's like, all right, if I ever decide to do this, I found the steps it takes to learn how to do this, but it starts with building a Google Doc. It's like, okay, so now I have all the stuff I need there to then do the other stuff if I can get to that point. So it's like sometimes you have to teach yourself and learn things too that aren't just all about how do I do an armbar. Like there's things that you have to advance on too. And by the way, I'm really good at knowing how to do an armbar. And I have advanced on that side of my life too. So you constantly learn and grow and learn new things and share things. Carson Drake, who's at OVW, by the way, is a great wrestler to watch out for. One of the trainings I went to when I was in Indiana, he happened to be there and he was trying to figure out this move. And I was like, hey, mind if I show you something? And he was like, sure. And now it's his finisher. Like, I know that there's things I can continue to bring and contribute to, but some of that is from that consciousness of continuing to learn. Like if he was like, I got it, like, okay, then he wouldn't have learned what's now his new finisher. On the obstacles, it's sometimes that too, like the sense of a little bit of that self-doubt, a little bit of that like, man, I feel like I'm running into walls. I think the hardest obstacle that I ever hit was knowing when it was time to leave. I worked for CZW. I in many respects it was not a great experience. In other respects it was wonderful, and I met some of the best connections in my life, in my personal life, not just my wrestling life, while I worked there. At the same time, like, man, I hated working for DJI, and I had to get to a point where it's like, I need to leave. The things I'm being promised aren't happening. Money wasn't happening the right way. Like things were going wrong, and it's like, okay, I've tried. I've offered ways to fix that you don't want to listen to. Peace out, yo. I still get calls from that man. That I'm like, can we talk about this thing? It's like, okay, what do you want to talk about? Because you're not going to do anything I tell you about, but let's talk. Like, and sometimes it's just that when you have to say no or pass on an opportunity. and again, like I'm very fortunate that I'm at a point in my wrestling life where wrestling pays some bills. Like they genuinely do. I am not just saying that, like it is part of my financial well-being. And
Pays your Netflix subscription. No.
right. Done. What are we at now? $13 a month for Netflix, $15 a month. Like taken care of. But I mean, my rent got paid for last month because of like straight wrestling paydays, plus then half of this or next month's already is taken care of. So like, is it good enough to take care of my entire life and existence? No, but it certainly is knocking out a good portion, which I super appreciate. But like that, again, that didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen with some hardship. That didn't happen with lessons being learned. Some of it about good money management. Like, you know, here's your hot, you know, here's your $20, kid. Thanks for coming. Doesn't cut it after like a couple years in, and doesn't cut it when then it's like, okay, we're all gonna go out and we're all gonna drink and eat 3 times the money that we just made. And it's like that doesn't compute. So like there's ways you have to be smart about it. And you know, young Phil too, getting into wrestling in a geographical location. This has changed a little bit now. Like the modality of the way people know about wrestling is certainly changed. But even then, even after the burgeoning days of the internet, when things a little bit more out there and more social media was happening, like physically at one point, I lived in a physical location where there just wasn't people in my wrestling life crossing paths. So like the people I knew in Maryland were like circling in like the Maryland, Philly area. The people I knew in like Pittsburgh were staying up there, maybe going into West Virginia, but I was in like Western Maryland and nobody was crossing there. And at that time, there wasn't some of the promotions that are there now. And so it was like, well, okay, when my car broke down for a couple of months and I couldn't afford to get a new car, it's like, well, I have no way to get to events. What am I going to do? And learning how to network, like, hey, can I get my friend on who's coming out of the area so I could get to an event? Like having to then, you know, learn that skill is a different skill set too. And, you know, some of that you have to learn through just the experience of dealing with it and growing with it. And I was in a place financially for a long time where it was like, there was no default. Like I said before, like I paid for college myself. I paid for wrestling training myself. So when I got my first job, I worked in college housing, and part of the reason I worked in college housing because it gave me housing, and it paid me next to nothing. I think it certainly now would pay me under what minimum wage is. Like it was low. And I only got paid, I don't think I only had a 9-month contract, my first 2 years. So it was like, okay, what 2 sticks am I rubbing together to make fire here? But it was just the reality of the situation. So it's like, one of the very first lessons someone told me was like, never go to an event that you can't afford to get home from. So it's like, that makes sense. I remember even in my professional life, when I was getting ready to graduate college, I had gotten a job interview at a college in Massachusetts. I couldn't go because I didn't have money for gas. And like, I remember calling the place and was like, I'm sorry. I don't have anybody to borrow from. I literally have this much money in my bank account. I can't make it. And like, that's just the reality. And so that certainly impinged upon what I was able to do in my wrestling life. That probably lost me out some deals in young Phil wrestling life. But like, I've learned a lot from that, and I've had to adjust and know that, okay, I have to be smarter about this. And how does this work? That also means that I'm a little bit more open to call some people out on like, hey, this is what you promised in writing. So guess what I need? Not in your writing, in cash, please. Like I have to be able to do that and have the confidence to be able to do that. And there's a good fortune that I have in what I like to believe is a decent reputation in the world of wrestling to be able to say like, hey, bud, like you need to take care of people. One of the last people I had to have a conversation with about appropriate pay was I knew walking in the building, I was like, something ain't right in Denmark. Like he's not going to pay us well. Like he's going to try to do something. I was breathing it in. I was going to be on commentary, and somebody I was on commentary with was like, yeah, the last time he had an event, he didn't have referees. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, he totally forgot the referees. So like people were doing double duty as wrestling and then reffing. And I was like, what? And I was like, and this was early streaming days. I mean, he was not streaming on anything. And I'm like, why does he have commentators? Like, who are we commentating to? Like, we should have been the refs. Well, it ended up that night, I ended up doubling as ring announcer, which I've done a lot on ring announcing and commentary. And so the end of the night comes, and there was not a large turnout. And he, by his own admission, did not do well promoting. And so into the night, and there's a line out the door, like he wants to meet with everybody individually, which I'm like, this is also typically sometimes a sign of something like not right in Denmark. So I get in there, and it's him and like two of his buddies. And I'm like, I think in retrospect, as I look back at the situation, I'm like, I think they were supposed to look intimidating.
I was just going to say, were they trying to intimidate you?
I think they were trying. But like when you have like your mid-30s friend who looks 15 years older with like the blue tank top that doesn't like fit over his gut, and like in the short shorts that look like they belong in the 30, wearing the mullet that isn't quite even, like, that's not an intimidating look. But looking back at it, I think he was trying to be intimidating. And he was like, wow. Now, for context, this was an event in Pennsylvania. He's like, wow, you're charging me more than this entire car did from Florida. And I was like, well, I'm glad I worked a better deal out than they did. And I got paid all of my money that day. So it's like but sometimes you have to be that way. And like, I don't like being like that. Like that is not Phil. Like that is not. But if the other person was honest in the first place, then I wouldn't have to be like that. So and sometimes I have to remember that. Like it's one thing to be a nice guy and the nice guy, but it's another thing to be fair to yourself and accountable to yourself at the end of the day.
It's not always personal. Sometimes it's just business.
Right.
But sometimes it's personal.
Yeah. Just blend.
So if you could have an action figure of yourself and it was one of the ones that could like talk, what phrases would you have it say, and what accessories would it come with?
For sure, Trust and Phil. Somewhere someone actually made a custom action figure for me, and I don't know where it's at this present moment. I think I know, actually. I think it's in a box in the other room, which was like super cool. Like when I got it, I was like, this is amazing. So it has to say Trust and Phil, absolutely. And maybe a couple of different ways to say Trust and Phil. Because there's the snarky way, and then there's like the friendly, like Trust and Phil. Oh my gosh, probably my first horrible attempt at a catchphrase was, "Can you handle it?" Not great. It was not a winner. So there's part of me in my brain though that's like, and actually I think, again, burgeoning days of the internet, I think it was when I would write wrestling responses in my social media, and that's how I would end it. Can you handle it? And every other word was capitalized, or every other letter was capitalized. So it was like C, little a, big N. Like,
it's like one of those like mocking, like fake woke kind of statements. Like
before that was a thing. Like I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just trying to make it the literal characters and the letters stand out.
That definitely has like mocking SpongeBob vibes, like the mocking SpongeBob meme. Like, can you handle it?
There was a while I used this on commentary a handful of times. I did not like overdo it. If you missed the beginning of the podcast, I am a ridiculous Doctor Who fan, and like I have a wall of Funko Pops, and there's like a column of them that are all Doctor Who related. And people used to give me Funko Pops, by the way. That's the weirdest thing. I like never knew anybody knew, and then like I suddenly got like a whole bunch. I'm like, this is really cool. But a line I used to steal a lot on commentary was like, "This isn't war, this is pest control." And I was like, I love it. I have totally abused that line way too many times in professional wrestling. It is the most professional wrestling thing Doctor Who has ever uttered, and I love it to death.
So just while we're on the topic of Doctor Who. Favorite Doctor, favorite companion.
Ooh, David Tennant, favorite Doctor. Favorite companion's harder. Ace. I'll have to say Ace from the original series.
Okay. I'm just glad you didn't say Rose.
No. Martha of the original of the newer series. Martha is my favorite companion.
Nice. Underrated.
Yeah. I thought them as like a doctor and companion. I was like, this is great. Because of this is so weird. Because of like acting life, Phil, I knew a lot of things like going on behind the scenes in BBC, and like they were so weird about contracts that like Martha and the way she was supposed to be utilized in Torchwood and later and coming back in Doctor Who, that didn't quite work out because BBC doesn't really contract in that way. So she couldn't make commitments to anybody because they weren't making a commitment to her. And so like she was supposed to appear in a couple of this or in one of the specials, and she couldn't because she was under contract with the, I think ITV. I almost said IWTV, with ITV in England because she was making another show because they didn't offer her anything. And so it was she well, quote, missed out because BBC was sort of uncoordinated, which is why now there's going to be some changes to Doctor Who that's coming up next season with a brand new doctor and a brand new showrunner and all sorts of stuff, because the showrunner is the old showrunner and bought the rights to more or less the rights to I can't remember the right phrasing. It's not the distribution rights, but basically has the right to make the content for Doctor Who to then sell to BBC. So he controls like all the contracting stuff now, separate from the BBC.
Oh.
So I'm interested in seeing how all that develops. Random nerdiness, I know. I have a lot of pockets of things. I'm
perfectly okay with that. I'm just, again, really glad I didn't say Rose. Too many people say Rose. I'm kind of like, Rose kind of sucks. Rose kind of my second to least favorite. Least favorite being Clara.
I have a soft spot for Clara. I really do.
She like
I got the whole Rose thing. I got the whole Rose thing. I did. I wasn't there for it. To me, the show is called Doctor Who. The show is about the Doctor. And I would hear interviews with Russell T Davies, and it's like, no, the show is about the companion and their experience to the Doctor. And that's how you share your experience, because you certainly can't understand what it's like to be the Doctor. And I was like, and I'm sorry, I have me showing off for 5 seconds. I said this jokingly earlier. I do have a 168 IQ. And there are times when I'm like, I can do some of this in my sleep. Like, I connected a little bit more to the Doctor than I did to any companion ever. And that wasn't for any reason other than just like, that's the person doing the adventuring, like bringing in, like sort of showing the way to the other person. Like I kind of attributed more or gravitated more to that than I did like associating with the companion. And so I get why they did. Television is very different than what it was. You know, I didn't get into the old series until it was way off and it was like playing on public television at the middle of the night on Saturdays. You know, like that's how I caught up on Doctor Who. But so I'm excited about to see where Doctor Who's about to go next, but I'm also like, it's gonna be a show about the companions again, and I'm really not about a show about the companions again. Like,
you know, I liked Donna a lot. I think part of that though is I just really like Catherine Tate just generally.
Yeah,
I just think she's very funny, but also like for me, I like their dynamic where it wasn't like starry-eyed in love.
Oh, Doctor.
Yeah.
And
I was like, nice.
Like I said, you know, Rose is not my favorite either.
Yeah.
I will say though, like when in Donna's run and that into that very first episode when they tease Rose's appearance, like didn't see it coming, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then but it wasn't, and it was just like the whole story connection to me. Like I thought that was a really super strong moment of Rose. And this is horrible because I'm like, that's probably like the best way they could have used her in that moment, because it was a total shock and a total surprise. And even for them to keep it the way they hid it from the public was just so super smart, because they didn't want it to get leaked. So they filmed it with a different actress at first, wearing that purple coat, and she hadn't been seen in the purple coat yet. So it just made a lot of sense. And I dig it.
I love one of the things I like about Doctor Who is how they connect like different bits and pieces from all of Doctor Who into like weave it all together. So you get those little like Easter egg type things, and it's like, oh. But
I'm also a huge Star Trek nerd. Like that was probably my introduction to sci-fi. My mom was a huge Star Trek fan. It's the first television show I remember watching as a kid, was reruns of Star Trek. And so like I'm all in on, I have a Paramount Plus is the only subscription service I directly pay for because I want to watch all the Star Trek content. So like Star Trek Strange New Worlds is frigging amazing, and the Easter eggs they have in that show are like beyond my expectations. I had a lot of hope for Discovery to do that for me, and it didn't. But I like Discovery. It's just its own thing. And they didn't set that up to per se be the prequel show that now Strange New Worlds is, which was really fan service. Like, and they've not shied away from it. They were like, fans begged for us to make this show, and they weren't wrong. Fans literally campaigned to make that show happen, and they've been knocking it out of the park in almost every episode. So I appreciate that show.
Fair enough. I'm not like the biggest sci-fi fan, but I did like Doctor Who. Never really got into Star Trek, but I can appreciate where people enjoy those things. That took us on a whole different path,
right?
Which is fine. I that's the best part about these interviews is that we can.
You haven't asked me the one question that I did see on Twitter that was like a standard question that you're supposed to ask.
I'm getting there.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. No. There's a couple more questions, and
okay.
then I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. But
I put thought behind that answer.
And then I wasn't going to ask you it. So we know what we would want the Phil action figure to say, but what accessories would it come with?
Ooh. What's funny is I think I got asked this question like years ago, and I feel like I had the right, like, well, I want these things with me, and now I couldn't tell you a damn thing that I would want with me. Random thing, and when I say this, I am so inexperienced, so please nobody challenge me to this because I would lose horribly. I actually was trained in tonfas, which are like nightsticks, like police nightsticks. I never used them in wrestling though, which like why didn't I do that? But like, so combat me back of mind, that is a skill set that I have. I don't know, part of me is like, when I got into wrestling training, I wanted to be the high flyer guy. Like I wanted to learn all of that. And my trainer was like, oh, you don't need that. And I'm like, and again, remember what I said earlier too, that I realized after I left training, like, oh, that it was a bad training. And I realized later, like, because he couldn't do any of that, that's why I didn't learn it. And I'm not even, and like, when I got into wrestling, the high flying stuff was a little bit different. So I'm not saying like all the amazing things that you're seeing some people do, because I could never do that then. But so I always relied on I had that conscious thought of like, okay, what else can I do? And by that point I had competed in judo and amateur wrestling. And I was like, I have that skill that I can rely on, and I can go back to that. And so I started to incorporate like grappling stuff. So for me, it's like, I really don't have a thing I per se bring with me. Like now I've started at like Revolver, like I always come out with a hat, and typically have a coat on. And so like now I would say if you wanted manager Phil, like that would be an accessory item, the coat and the hat. Like the military style coat, the military style hat. Like now that's a part of who I am. But that hasn't always been a part of me. And then so like that's what I'm stuck on. I was like, I just relied on wrestling. Woo. I had the early 2000s like hookah shell necklace for a while. And then like the metal bead necklace, I had that. But yeah, like for a minute So I worked for a company in North Carolina called AIWF. They have a annual event every year. It's called Deal with. I'm going to be wrong about this. I think it's called Deal with the Steel. And every match is a steel cage match, but there's another gimmick associated with it. And so my first year I did this, it was a 2-ring, 8-man Money in the Piggy Bank ladder match, and there was a pink pig pinata that hung from the cage that then I could cash in for any match I wanted. I won that match, and I carried that damn pink pig pinata for a year. And so like that is part of my wrestling journey, and I want that pink pig pinata.
Perfect. That can be like a chase item.
There you go.
So, what is the wrestling word that you use most outside of wrestling?
Like gimmick is too easy. I think kayfabe actually. I remember accidentally one time I said kayfabe at work, and I was like, context. The word kayfabe means like I had to define it. Ooh, I don't remember what it was, but I remember it was my boss, and she was like, "We got to not tell our coworker this thing," and I was like, "Yeah, I'll keep it kayfabe." And I was like, I said that out loud. Okay.
Fun. See, I love asking people that question because it usually comes with a really good story. Where they're like, yeah, I've had to explain to people what X, Y, or Z is.
Yeah.
And that always just makes me happy.
Oddly enough, when I've brought in the word gimmick, I guess there's just enough context to understand, like, it means anything. The thing in the moment, right? It can mean anything. So it literally means the thing in the moment. So it's like people just like roll with it whenever I use the word gimmick.
Nice.
I feel like the expression "what a work" has come expressed from my lips at times.
Yeah, like clearly I'm not, nor have I ever been a wrestler, but since I've been involved with my local company and all of my friends at this point are wrestlers or wrestling adjacent in some way, I have picked up on all of this, and I don't intentionally do it, but sometimes I'll ask people if they're telling me something. I was like instead of saying, "Oh, for real," I'd be like, is that a work or is that a shoot?" Like,
right. Legit, like I use like legit is not a wrestling word, but I kind of replace it for the word shoot. So I'm like, legit.
Yep. It's funny how that, like, those little like bits and pieces of like that specific culture and like word set like just infiltrates every part of you.
I feel like at different times I have taken on the phrases or mannerisms of different people. Like I'll like something they use, and I'll realize later, like, oh my gosh, I'm totally like replicating what they do, how they do, what they say, something. And like it isn't until I have the conscious recognition that I'm like, I need to not do that.
Or like you start saying something ironically, and then you're like, oh no, now I'm saying it unironically.
For those of us who know DJ Hyde, there's a lot of mannerisms that we make fun of him for doing. But like I will say, in my case, just specific to me, like he would just go, "Well, Phil." And like, so there's times that like I'll literally rephrase something to myself, and I'm like, "Well, Phil."
The voice of DJ Hyde will guide you.
Oh God, no! Just say no. There is a promoter, and like that name is blackballed from me ever saying it near her. Like she will not let me utter those words.
So I know that you drive to different events, a lot of time in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you like to listen to? What is your go-to like
I rotate. I find, even when I get fixated on one particular thing, then like in a few months I have to change to something else. So I am listening to a lot of there's a podcast called Scared to Death. It's from a comedian named Dan Cummins and his wife Lindsay. I originally got into him because he also, and it's all creepypasta stories. And so the way I got into them was because he also has a true crime and true history one called Time Suck, where he, picks either like a serial killer or a particular moment in history and will just, here's facts, like here's just stuff about it. And then like I would sort of pick off from there for a while. Like I would get into true crime and would go into last podcast on the left, or like how did this get made, or Welcome to Night Vale, which by the way, amazing episodic podcast. Oh my god, I feel bad. Like there's another one I'm listening to right now. I have a subscription to it, and now I can't remember the name of it. It's another creepypasta like one. So right now I think I'm on like the creepypasta kick. When I got into the true crime kick for a minute, when I had a favorite serial killer, I was like, and it wasn't even he was my favorite serial killer. The situation around it was like, because the police really screwed up a lot, repeatedly, over and over. And I was like, this is insane. Like the circumstance of all of this is insane. And it was a, part of me is like, I don't even want to say who, but like there was a serial killer in the 70s, and it's 50 years later, and like one of the victims that survived is like shamed by her family. And I'm like, she's just looking to get something out of it. I'm like, the first interview she gave after the incident was 50 years after it happened. Like she didn't like write a tell-all book. She didn't like get like a life biopic. Like she waited and didn't live in the same town. And then like finally a newspaper went to her, and 50 years afterwards, she gives an interview, 45 years maybe, gives an interview. And like her family speaks on it, was like, she's just looking for the attention. She survived a serial killer who was at the time the most prolific serial killer in the United States. Like, what? Like the randomness about this particular story. Like, and at that point I was like, I need to not be paying attention to true crime stories right now. I need mental distance. But that was just
the
me.
Green River.
No, it was Dean Corll. He was called the Candyman.
Okay.
Yeah. So like that, I was like, I need distance. I mean, and Dan is good about it, because it isn't just like, it is a lot of fact, but he also inserts a little bit of humor. He is a stand-up comedian. And so like another one of the serial killers he's talked about was a Russian serial killer named Andrei Chikatilo. And he makes a Andrei Chikatilo voice, and like, it kills me every time he does it. And it's like, I can't be like this, the humorness of this and the seriousness of what the person did, I'm like, shouldn't coexist in my brain right now. So like this was just a me thing. I was like, I gotta separate this out. Like, I gotta like not let this be part of my being. I'm a Andrea Chikatilo. And I'm like, no.
So when you're on the road and you're driving, like I am a Snackosaurus Rex. So what are your go-to snacks? Like I love snacks. What are your like go-to snacks? And then I will judge them harshly. Probably not.
Now, for context, remember I have a weird stomach.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I actually on event days I typically don't eat a lot, just because my stomach gets weird. But I love king size Reese cups. Peanut butter kills my stomach, so like I always do it. It has to be after an event before I can have them. So I would say those, even when I know they're gonna hurt me, like I still have to get them. That is probably my biggest go-to, honestly. Like every now and again I'll grab something here or there, but like that is probably my biggest singular go-to.
Good to know. You can't really, go wrong with peanut butter and chocolate. I'll be honest about it.
Right. Now, okay, let's rephrase that one, because I have a lot of family that likes to cook. Like I said, my dad's one of 9 kids. and they all think they know how to make like the homemade like Easter egg, the chocolate Easter egg with peanut butter inside. And I don't know what they do to the chemical composition of the chocolate and the peanut butter, but it is, many of them make it the most foul tasting thing I've ever ate in my entire life. And I'm like, what did you do? And I don't know what they've done. But no. So I do have to disagree that it is not as easy apparently as we all feel.
So I've seen like recipes for like copycat, like Reese's or whatever, and it's usually peanut butter and powdered sugar.
That makes sense.
But I don't even remember what I was watching. I watch a lot of Food Network, so it could have been roughly anything. But apparently, Skippy peanut butter is the most like closely related.
Okay.
That it would make the best dupe.
Huh.
I don't know if it's true.
I'm like, maybe I have to try.
I've never experimented with it. You can go hurt your stomach all you want trying to figure this out. Don't come back to me on that. Like, that's all you.
Fair.
But I mean, that's just what I've been told.
It's funny because like my favorite work snack, I love green grapes. Like I will buy a pack of green grapes and just like, that's my, actually now that I'm thinking about it, tomorrow, that's probably what I'm gonna get, because I feel like I've been munching way too much lately. So like I have to tone it down. So like I'll just be munching on green grapes tomorrow.
Grape day. Do you have any hidden talents?
Ooh. My was like, yes, and then I'm like, I can't name a single one of them right now.
None of my talents are hidden. Like,
right.
They're all outward talents.
I am the talent. There you go.
That's a phrase.
Right. I mean, I mentioned this before. I've done a lot of acting work. I've done some voiceover work, and that many people don't know about. I am the voice of a phone system somewhere. I'm not going to say where, but I'm the voice of a phone system. And one day I actually answered the phones at this place, and they were, I threw everybody who called off, like totally, like you could hear it in their voice, like they couldn't get their thoughts together. And one of them thought like they were still talking to the recording. And then another one was like, wait, hold on.
Like, is it a real person every time?
Were you the same person? I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to confuse you. Yeah. Shoot. I used to be able to play the piano. I cannot really play the piano anymore. I used to play the clarinet. I cannot play the clarinet anymore. Because it's just been so long. My ability to speak French, even like now I'm at a point where I can only understand little quips here and there, but that at least gives me sometimes context of a conversation, even if I don't understand the words. But not enough to talk to somebody I know in wrestling. Like I need a translator. I'm trying to think of sorry, I moved my room around, my office around the other this weekend, and like I found something that I think is part of a costume, and I have no idea what it is. Like I have no clue at all. What I thought it was like a tie tack at first, and I'm like, I don't know why there's this thing. Seriously, like I have.
Is it like an earring?
No, it is a solid bar of a thing. Sort of a solid. It looks like it might fit into a slot of something, and then this little pendant that looks like a butterfly.
Yeah, I kind of got butterfly vibes.
I have no idea what this is too, but I had a costume box because acting, and so I think it might be part of like a Victorian costume.
Well, when this goes up for people to watch,
identify this.
What the hell that is?
Right. It's gonna come back and be something horribly embarrassing that I know nothing
Tweet
about.
It, Phil.
The horrible context of I don't necessarily understand all innuendo. Like that's an amazing context, amazing hidden talent. Said no one ever.
So, what would you go back and tell a 10-year-old version of yourself? If you could go back in time and talk to little Phil.
You know what? Instead of going to college, here's some things to invest in, and don't ever take the money out. Someone I went to college with, his brother was one of the first people who put money into Bitcoin. And like, this is what I'm talking, like when Bitcoin was like a hundredth of a penny, and bought like thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin. And then had the audacity to go on and become a software engineer and didn't need the money from Bitcoin. So it's still sitting there. How? Like had that foresight, had the money somehow to do that. But yeah, I tell young Phil, like, hey, Phil, this thing called cryptocurrency is going to happen. You want it. You want a lot of it. Tesla is a thing. Get out in like about 2019, but Tesla's a thing. I think I would give my past self investment advice. Because life advice, you know, the mistakes I've made, or lessons I've learned, I think are important to the person I am today, even if I hated them at the time and still hate some of them to this day. Some of it I think I had to live with and deal with and go through. I am somebody who does believe in a little bit of, it's going to sound weird because it's going to be contradictive, but I believe that everybody has free will, but I believe that everybody's fated. So I believe like you have your freedom of your own choice, but that there is a force out there that is leading you. And I will say there was a period of my life where I felt like I went away from where I was supposed to be fated. And I felt it in my core being. And there was a time then when I got to the next place in my life and I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like every fiber of my being, like being so unsure about a brand new, like, you know, if you've ever gone to a new job, you know what it's like, oh, is this the right place? I don't know. And like everything inside of me was like, this is the right place and where I'm supposed to be. Because of my other field and I do have part of one of my degrees is in psychology. So it's like, I have taken what they call a personality type indicator. And it judges, you know, are you an extrovert, introvert? Are you thinking or feeling? Do you have intuition or sensing? Are you perceiving or judging? And my intuition compared to all of them is like ridiculously off the charts compared to all of the other numbers. My perception is also not super high, but I would say what's normal. My introvert extrovert doesn't know what it's doing, and my sensing and thinking don't know what they're doing either. They're both like a 1 every time I've taken it, but I always get the same result, even if the questions are changed on where I rank. My E is low, my F is low, my N is like through the roof, and I never listen to my intuition. And almost every time my intuition is right. So maybe young Phil would be told, listen to your intuition. It's okay. Like if your gut is, trust your gut. Like, and what I do have in my office life, I do have staff and I do train them. And I one of the things I tell them, we talk about like security awareness and then, you know, safety and stuff. And one of the things I say is like, trust your gut. If you know, you're going to come to know the place you work, the place you're going to spend most of your time, you're going to know the traffic in that space. If something doesn't feel right or look right, you're probably right. Trust your instinct on that and pay attention to what it's trying to tell you, and then be observant about what's going on in your environment. And so I would probably tell young Phil that. Pay attention to what's going on around you and trust your gut. If something doesn't look right or feel right, you're probably right.
So just have a couple more fun questions, and then
I feel like I got super serious there for a moment. So yeah, fun questions. Yay.
Fun questions. Woo. So you and I used to talk sometimes in spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And a question that would come up frequently in spaces, not like that question, not that question. I think I know what you're thinking. Not that question.
I don't know what I don't know.
But what is the biggest animal that you could take in a fight with just your hands, no weapons? And you can pretend it's attacking you so you're not attacking a defenseless animal.
Oh, okay. I think you wanted me to like pantomime for a second. Like,
I mean, if you want to, but no, that's not where I was going on this.
The weirdest one I thought I was gonna have to one time was a full-grown deer, like with antlers. Was at my grandparents when they retired. They built a house in the mountains, and I was up in the morning and I was going out to my car, and a deer was nearby, and I didn't see it right away, and it jumped up on its hind legs, and I was like, I'm about to punch a deer. Like, I was like, what else do you do? Like, it's gonna hit you. And I reared back, and it just dropped back to its feet and walked away. And I was like, okay. Meanwhile, my neighbors had a Northumberland dog. I think I'm probably mispronouncing it. I think it's called a Northumberland. They're the size of a small bear. Freakish, like large and very hairy, and like seemingly very friendly. And would come up and all nice and like sort of like smell you and check you out, and then wants to bite your friggin' hand off. Like, so like there's part of me that was like, I could take a dog. No, there's some dogs. No.
You could take a specific breed of dog.
Right. Certain dog. But that dog, no. So I honestly can't say I'd be able to fight all dogs. I can't fight all dogs.
Maybe like a Bichon.
Right.
So this is a question that always comes from our VIP Vic, who always asks, and so I specifically stated that I've actually incorporated it into my questions for the recorded interviews that we do, because he always asks that. Vic is a wonderful supporter of the Bald Monkeys and independent wrestling, and I super appreciate having him in our chats. And he always asks this. I'm going to, in turn, ask this to you. Who has the best gear of all time?
So, of course, it's me, so I have to give a complicated answer. A gear I hated, like very upfront hated, because it turns into a gear I really like. When Jeff Jarrett had like the one long leg tights and then the other leg, I think, just had trunks, I thought it was a horrible look. I didn't like it. For him, I don't think it worked. For the kind of wrestler he was, I don't think it worked for him. I then had a friend later, I want to say his real name, sorry, Jason Collins, wore that look, and I was like, oh, it looks good on him. Will Ospreay did that look, but his was like one full leg, and then the other leg was like, I think, more like biker singlet length, and it had like flat, like a design on it, and then flags came off of it, and so it was like flags from all the different countries that he had wrestled in as part of the design. And I was like, this is friggin' cool. And it made me think of about 15 years ago, Alex Shelley used to have this pair of gear that had like the American flag is incorporated as part of the design. And I was like, to me, that was like the next evolution was this Will Ospreay version. And Will also had another variant of that design, but was like a Spider-Man print. And I was like, that was really cool. And yes, I'm a Spider-Man fan, so it's like, that helps too. And like Trey Miguel right now is crushing it with his gear. I'm a bit of a gearhead. I'm like, this stuff looks really friggin' cool. But like, I think of somebody like a Carver of Cutter's Alley. And Val, as you and I have had some conversations about Carver, and I will freely admit I'm a little bit of a Carver stan. Like, I'm okay with that, because the look at Carver, just look, and the emotion you get right away, and the feeling you get right away is so pervasive, and it's like it strikes the right chord. It fits what he's doing. Like, to me, like, that is just as important as everything else that happens in wrestling. And when I start to think of other people's gear, it's like, if I just saw them in a ring without any context or understanding of who they were, do I get it? And Carver, I get it. Like, and to have been in a match with Carver, and when you see that look coming towards you, you have that little blip in your brain that's like, what is happening right now? Is this real life? like, there is that little blip that happens because it hits that right there. And I think that is part of, like, for Carver, I think that's why fans dig him the way they do, and why more people aren't booking Carver, I don't understand, because he hits that right. He hits the right emotional chord. He hits the right look. He has the vibe. I mean, it's a serial killer coming at you, and you easily understand it's a serial killer coming at you very, very quickly. And so, like, for me, that gear works for that reason. Aesthetically, I can look at other gear too and be like, this looks cool. The Trey gear is friggin' cool. The Will Ospreay, I don't like Will's gear now. To be honest, I don't. The gear that he had, I really dug. Right now, I think Trey is absolutely killing it.
So when you were talking about Carver, one of the things that you hit on, like, kind of like as I was thinking about it, was like, you look at Carver and you know exactly what he's doing, what his deal is.
Yeah.
You know, there's no,
I mean, the occasional swinging of a chain or carrying an axe doesn't hurt either, but
there's no question about what you are getting into when you see Carver. And also, you know, I know that you had a match with him. I have never, and hope I will never have to face Carver in that fashion. But he has looked at me before, and I was very terrified in that moment. Yes.
There was a moment in our match.
He glanced in my general direction once, and I was like,
right. That first vibe when you're like facing off is like hit in a way that I was not expecting. And then we're fighting, and we end up outside at one point in our fight. I'm very upset that this match is not released yet, and I keep reminding this promoter that I'm desperately wanting to see this match. I literally get my ass handed to me for like 10-15 minutes, but I loved the match. There's a moment where he's beaten me up. He's literally bashed my head up against the side of a car a couple times, and I'm sitting on the ground, like, out of it. And he puts, and I feel his presence, and he just like sits down next to me, and I'm like, what is he doing? And he puts my head in his lap, and he just starts petting my head. And it was like, what the hell is going on here? What the hell is going on? Danger, danger. I gotta go. like, so there is a vibe that it comes off of him that, like, it cannot be easily replicated. And I absolutely advocate for more people to take a look at him and what he is doing and book Carver.
Hashtag book Carver.
There you go. And if I didn't say that, he'd probably hurt me.
I mean, fair. How do you take your pancakes?
Ooh, I like them a little thinner. Not to the point of crispy. I think that's a little too much, but like the big fluffy ones, I can't. They soak up all the stuff, and like it's too big, and like I want to be able to like get the butter and get a little bit of syrup. I like more butter than syrup. That has changed over time. As a little kid, like, you know, it had to be layered, like smothered in syrup. But I'm pretty basic. I don't do all the fruit. I don't do the Cool Whip or whipped cream. Just thinner pancakes with butter and syrup.
Okay.
How do you like yours?
Depends on my mood. Okay. Go to just like, you know, your standard buttermilk pancake with just syrup. If I'm feeling fancy, I do like to get pancakes from different places. And I like to try different types of pancakes. This weekend I had pancakes at Denny's. They had like some strawberry, it was like some like vanilla stuff, and then some like strawberries and strawberry sauce. Super good.
Okay.
That was quite a delight. I do love a good like cinnamon roll pancake.
That sounds good, actually.
Yeah, it's like they take a cinnamon roll and make it into a pancake. Yeah, so
a little bit of blue cacao in your pancake batter and a touch of cinnamon with a little bit of vanilla extract is amazing. For someone who doesn't drink that much, I cook with a lot of alcohol.
Like, I don't drink it all. So
I make I make a whiskey cake that people would kill for. And it gets, when I make it for my office,
to get lit.
It's a fun time. And it all started because someone gave me a piece of whiskey cake that they bought from a church bake sale. And I'm in my office. I had not eaten that day, and it was like 3:30 in the afternoon. And I take what was basically a shot size slice of whiskey cake, and like I'm sitting there, it's like 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, and I'm like, whoo, wow, what is hit? Oh, oh, yeah, keep that in mind. So I learned how to make it, and it's probably one of my favorite things to make, that a lot of other people seem to enjoy as well.
Nice. Noted.
Tracy Elena, who is known in like especially in the Ohio area in wrestling, whenever I bake something, she's like, I want you to take pictures. So she has seen like my red velvet bourbon chocolate chip cookies. That is also a strong staple. I mean, I make the 3-ingredient peanut butter cookies, like, but I have to make them with a Hershey Kiss. So I know people call them all sorts of different things, but I don't know what to call them. Peanut butter with the Hershey Kiss. I make what? Okay. I don't know how we got onto this, but we're going to talk about food for half a second.
I'm a fat girl. I love to talk about food.
So I don't know why I'm still playing with this thing. I have no idea what this is.
Just keep handling it.
So, and God only knows. So as a kid, my grandmother, she was my mother's mother, was from the South, but she was what I would call like, she was the refined Southern lady. So she would just sit there and she would be kind and patient, and like she was just so reserved. But at holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas especially, you would walk in, and the entrance door was the dining room. And you walk in, and the dining room table would be covered with desserts. And one of my favorite was real Rice Krispie treats. And let me clarify what I mean by real. You make these I now almost from memory know how to make these Rice Krispie treats. You take peanut butter and Karo syrup, the clear Karo syrup. You heat it low on a saucepan. You mix it up. You blend in your Rice Krispies. You put it in a large bowl, or large pan, or whatever. Then you take in a double boiler a bag of chocolate chips and about a third of a bag of butterscotch chips. Melt them all together, and then layer that on top of the Rice Krispie treats. So these, I've heard people call them butterscotch, like Scotties, I think I've heard them called.
So I'm in the Midwest, and we call those a Scotcheroo here.
Okay. That's what I grew up knowing as a Rice Krispie treat.
Oh.
I was like 18 years old the first time I saw one in the wild. And like I oddly enough, it was at a convenience store near my grandparents' house. And so I go to this convenience store and I grab one off the shelf, and I'm like, I just want to munch. And I open up the thing. I was like, oh, it doesn't have like the chocolate on it. I'm sure it'll taste this fine. And I bit into it. I'm like, what is this? What is this buttery, sugary thing that doesn't have the flavor of a real Rice Krispie treat? So to me, a real Rice Krispie treat is cooked with the peanut butter inside of it and the syrup and sugar. I forgot there is sugar too. And it's all blended together. It hardens a little bit more that way too. And then you put all the chocolate, the butterscotch, and it is the most amazing thing ever. And I tell people about this and they think I'm crazy. And then I make it for them and they're like, this is not a Rice Krispie treat. And I'm like, yes, it is. It's the only thing that should be called a Rice Krispie treat ever.
So, like I said, here we have those. We call them Scotcheroos. I think you can get them at Casey's. I know there's a Casey's by the event center.
I have tried them. They're passable. They're better than Sheetz's version of them. They're not there. They're almost there, but they're not there.
So I'm going to tell you, my mom, love my mom. She'll probably watch this at some point. My mom usually watches my stuff because she's a sweetheart.
Awesome.
My mom makes a bar that is similar to a scotcheroo, except for she doesn't use Rice Krispies. She uses like Special K,
Okay.
and it is on God the best thing. Like every time I give them, people are just like they love them. It like my mom is like locally known for them. Like she makes them for everything.
Wow.
But they're super good. You don't eat them by the piece, you eat them by the row. And, and
Fair. Fair.
so if you want to go out on a limb, well, try it.
I'm like, well, I have access to a kitchen while I'm in Iowa. But then that means I'm gonna have to cook for everybody. I'm not doing that.
No, just me and you.
Okay.
Everyone else can suck it.
Now you made me totally lose my train of thought. But yeah, those are. I remember what I was gonna say now. So, Reese's. Hear me, Reese's. You had a protein bar, which was the best thing ever because though you're Reese's and you used your peanut butter as the thing because you're Reese's, I get it, and you had the cereal pieces that you can't call Rice Krispies because you're Reese's, so you had the cereal pieces,
Puffed rice
of puffed rice covered in the Reese's peanut butter with a layer of chocolate that you made into the best protein bar I have ever had in my entire existence. And now you don't make them anymore. I want them back. I am begging. Because of my weird stomach stuff, I can't stay on the protein I'm currently taking. So I'm also because of my weird stomach stuff, I'm also horribly protein deficient. So I have to take protein. I can't take any more of the protein I'm having, and I really want better tasting protein stuff.
Protein stuff tastes just fucking terrible.
Right. Like every now and again I get like a good one, and then of course I can never remember its name or find it again. So, but like I want that back, Reese's. Please. It's really good. Because they were like scotcheroos.
So I'm gonna take you on like a little journey. So like just come on the journey with me. I know that you will. So
I'm here with
imagine that you're at the store and you're hungry
people.
and you're looking for something sweet and you're
Ooh.
like swinging down the aisles and you go down the cookie aisle and you're like, who doesn't love cookies? And so you're looking at all the cookies and you don't want chocolate chip or peanut butter or oatmeal raisin. You want America's favorite cookie, which is the Oreo. So you go to the section with all the Oreos. You go to the section with all the Oreos and you don't take any like the flavored ones. You just want your OG like chocolate cookie, white cream center Oreo. But you still have options because you can get like the thin Oreos, or you can get like the regular Oreos, or you can get like the double stuffed, or you can get like the mega stuffed. Like, how stuffed you getting?
Okay, I'm not a big Oreo fan, and I think because that like I think I had so many as a kid, I was Oreoed out.
And the interview, no, I'm kidding.
Right. Because I thought what you were gonna say, I don't know why this popped in my brain. Because at first I was like, if I'm going down a cookout, I'm getting chocolate cookies. But caveat to that is EL fudge stripe cookies. Like, damn. I'll even one up that. Because I'm a Maryland boy. I will support my Maryland business. There is a cookie. They're called Burger cookies. Burger is the family's name that has made these cookies for like 160 years. They take a shortbread cookie and they dip it in fudge. And so it is just this amazing fudge shortbread cookie. And I think I don't want to say the wrong name. There is a large brand name company that tried to steal their recipe that is actively selling a version of their own of this cookie, and it doesn't touch it. So a burger cookie, and I'm holding my hand like this because they are big, like shortbread dipped in fudge cookie. Like there are bells ringing. Those are amazing. I do go double stuff. Because let's face it, even if I had two regular Oreo cookies, I'm taking off the ends of two of them. I will eat them, and then I will blend it together and make one giant little Oreo. So it might as well be a double stuff. But if I get a double stuff, I have to make it a double stuff. If it's a mega stuff, okay, I'm fine. If it's a double stuff, I have to double it.
So that is the unofficial correct answer to the question. Congratulations, you have won. I don't know what you won, but you won. Double stuffed is the correct stuff to cookie ratio.
I pride myself in being a strong baker. I cannot decorate to save my life, but I'm a strong baker. The very first attempt I ever made to make a cheesecake was to make a red velvet swirl cheesecake. My first one ever to try to ever do cheesecake, period. And I'm like, I want to make a red velvet swirl cheesecake because my brain. And the crust is made of Oreo cookies, not just crumbled, not just the cookie crust, the cookie layer of the Oreo.
Yeah, like the crushed cookie.
It is the actual whole Oreo placed in the pan, and where you have holes in from the double stuffed Oreo that you use, you get the Oreo minis, and they fit inside the holes in between where the double stuff sits. And because it then melts down because of the cream in the cookie, it then creates a layer barrier of a crust for the cheesecake.
Oh,
damn. Like, I will say that is a strong crust. Like,
that sounds hefty.
I failed miserably at the cheesecake part the first two times I tried, but the crust I got pretty on. I mean, except for the fact that it was like a brick. It was pretty on.
So what do you have coming up? What do you want to promote? Promote upcoming shows, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, OnlyFans, TikTok, merch, whatever you have. I want to hear it all.
So you can follow me on all social media except OnlyFans. I do not have an OnlyFans at Trust in Phil. So that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Snapchat. I feel like I'm forgetting something. At Trust in Phil. I'm not knocking OnlyFans. I'm just saying I don't have an OnlyFans. So follow me any of those on social media. Trust in Phil. You can also find me this coming Saturday, July 9th at Wrestling Revolver. That's at Horizon Event Center in Clive, Iowa. It's really Des Moines. We want you there. We want you there. You can also watch live on Fight. Also, because I am the president of wrestling, so also this Saturday is MCW Pro Wrestling in Harvard Grace, Maryland at the State Theater at the same time. I'm at Wrestling Revolver. Come to Wrestling Revolver. We want to see you out in Iowa. But if you're in Maryland, I understand. MCW Pro Wrestling at Harvard Grace. I'm looking at my calendar because I will forget stuff if I don't actually look at it. And I have an event on here that got canceled. Other event that you know who you are. So you're making me stay in Iowa a day longer than I thought I was going to be. Anyway, sorry, love you. Then on the 23rd is one of the most prestigious tournaments in professional wrestling, especially in independent wrestling. It's MCW Pro Wrestling's Shamrock Cup, and we're returning to our original home, the MCW Arena, or the RJ Meyer Arena, in Joppa, Maryland. It's 1000 Joppa Farm Road in Joppa, Maryland. I have memorized this address because it's so easy to memorize. 1000 Joppa Farm Road in Joppa, Maryland, MCW Pro Wrestling, the Shane Shamrock Memorial Cup Tournament. So many people that you are going to know are in it. Please make sure you check it out, mcwprowrestling.com. And then I end the month with High Tension Wrestling making its debut in Reading, Pennsylvania on the 30th. And then on the 31st, it's Honorary Wrestling Federation in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. So I have a lot of things that are coming up for the rest of July. This weekend, of course, check out Wrestling Revolver because, look, there's Sammy Callahan, Eddie Edwards, and Swerve Strickland. I always want to call him Shane Strickland. I'm sorry. I knew him as Shane before I knew him as Swerve. Then we got, oh, look, who's this guy? Oh, look, it's John Moxley. Oh, look, it's Ruby Riott. Oh, hey, Ruby Soho now. Sorry. Oh, and hey, look, that's Gail Kim. And oh, hey, look, that's Rich Swann. And so much more talent. Are so many more people. So many people.
I can say from going to a couple of Revolver shows, Definitely y'all don't skimp out on talent or matches. There's always like there's always stuff announced, and I'm always like, that's a lot. And then there's always like more.
Oh yeah. And you have Dan the Dad versus Man Scout. You have Jessica Havoc versus Allie Ketch. You have Jake Chris versus Mance Warner in a bunkhouse brawl. You have Zachary Wentz returning versus Blake Christian versus Crash Jackson. You have the Revolver Tag Team Champions, POS Steve Macklin and Weston Blake versus Matt Taven. Matt Taven. I always say Taven, sorry. And Mike Bennett. You have Speedball Mike Bailey, the new Impact X Division champion versus one called Manders.
I'm excited for that one.
I knew you would be. I saw you grinning as I was about to say. Ruby Soho versus Billy Starks. And like this was for real, like in one of the like most touching moments I've ever seen in pro wrestling. Like we had Roby. I was trying to say Ruby and Soho at the same time. Ruby cut a promo to call out Billy without Billy knowing that we were going to be playing this promo. Aww. And she was trying to get out of the ring, and I can't remember if it was the ring announcer or the ref were like, you need to stay. And you just need to stay. And so like she didn't know it was coming, and that was just a really cool thing. Then we have John Moxley and Sami Callihan versus Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards. So the reunion of the Switchblades against the Wolves. Then you have, the match that, might be a little important to me as, the unit, the two-time Revolver World Champion, JT Dunn, along with Infrared, Tyler Matrix, and Logan James. I will be bringing them out to the ring. I will be with them at ringside for the Cage of Horrors match as they take on the crew of Swerve Strickland, Rich Swann, and Matthew Palmer. If Matthew Palmer doesn't make it out of Texas, I'm totally fine. I hate Matthew Palmer. I really like. Have you ever seen the movie Clue, by the way? Like,
that's one of my favorite movies, yes.
Clue is my favorite movie of all time. And like there's a scene with Mrs. White, totally ad-lib scene where she's like, flames on the side of my face, heaving breath, seething, burning. Like that is Matthew Palmer in my brain every time I see him. And now he's a monster hunter. I think I have the same cloak in my costume bag. I'm just saying. Dusty wig, Matthew Palmer.
Maybe he can make use of your thingy that you found.
See, there's things I want to say right now, and I have to be very careful because when I say things, sometimes people are like, so you mean this thing, right? And so like I did just tell you that like I'm a huge, gigantic like Carver of Cutter Alley stan, and like why no one has booked the Carver of Cutter's Alley versus the Monster Hunter Matthew Palmer, I don't know, because people are not wanting to make money. I think that literally is match the Monster Hunter Matthew Palmer versus Carver of Cutter's Alley makes money. I'm just saying. He's not a part of this match. Like he's not. He's like genuinely not. I might want him to be, but he's not. I just think, but this match is going to be, I feel really bad because like I'm going to be killed that I am not putting over just this match alone, but like I can't stand Matthew Palmer, and the thought of like maybe like he, I don't know, has another accident is fine. It's fine. And since we've talked a little bit about a serial killer that we both know, that's fine.
I
mean, because it's not like the last time we had a Cage of Horrors match that Matthew Palmer wasn't in the match at all and then showed up dressed as a referee and pulled off the shirt and got the pinfall with doing nothing in the match. I'm over it.
I can totally see where you wouldn't maybe hire
harbor some
somebody,
resentment and maybe not want to ever see Matthew Palmer again.
maybe, you know, hire somebody to facilitate that. Pure speculation on my part. I don't know anything.
But if I'm fair, I made that offer to some people at Metroplex Wrestling down in Texas, and you know, Matthew Palmer made it past every single one of them.
I mean, Carver would make geographic sense.
At the same time, like, can you control a serial killer like Carver to do what you want him to do? Like, it
could backfire in a very
that's a dangerous
way.
risk. And like we've already said, like I had a match with him and it didn't go well for me. So I don't know what I could do to tempt him. But so
maybe he needs a new skin apron
made of red velvet.
Hmm.
So in this Cage of Horrors match, the real main event of Revolver's I don't know event called Cage of Horrors, not listed like number 2, like Sami Callihan has put on the website. The Cage of Horrors match between Swerve Strickland, Rich Swann, and Monster Hunter Matthew Palmer versus the Unit, the 2-time Revolver World Champion JT Dunn, and Infrared of Tyler Matrix and Logan James, with me at their side, at ringside, watching this match in person, and the mayhem that's going to occur in front of this entire crowd this coming Saturday is going to be every dream I want realized in professional wrestling, all rolled up into one match called Cage of Horrors. And it's going to be a nightmare for the crew, and I hope a reoccurring nightmare for Sami Callihan as he cries himself to sleep when he realizes that the Unit has yet dominated another match that he tried to pull a rug out from under us on. Because we have been the dominating force in Wrestling Revolver, and we will continue to be, because this is the era of the Unit. And on that, you can trust in Phil.
And on that note, thank you everybody for watching tonight. Definitely thank you so much, Phil, for hanging out with me and spending your evening talking with me about wrestling and nerdy stuff and food, all of my favorite things. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you everybody once again for watching. Be sure to follow Phil everywhere at Trust in Phil. He's still working on that OnlyFans, but we'll get there. And be sure to tune in next week. I will have another interview ready. I don't know who at this time, but I know that I'll have one. I promise. Thank you, everybody. And certainly thank you, Phil.